The 7-3 Jaguars are in first place in the AFC South and face the 4-6 Cardinals today in Arizona, kicking off at 4:25 Eastern, which is why we're joining you at 11 a.m. Good morning, Tony and Blythe. Did you enjoy sleeping in?
Hold up. I need you to say the first half of that sentence one more time.
You got it, Tony. I am happy to do so. The 7-3 Jaguars are in first place in the AFC South, kicking off against the 4-6 Cardinals at 4:25 p.m. Eastern today.
And we just celebrated Thanksgiving?
And we just celebrated Thanksgiving.
There isn't like an NFL rule against this?
There is not. We are not talking about the NFL draft at our Thanksgiving tables this year.
No.
We are talking about winning football games.
I never heard the word NFL draft from anybody. And like yesterday I was out grabbing lunch at Publix and I got a Jaguar sub. And there were a couple guys around me that apparently had not heard of it yet. They were like, man, you're like a pro at this Publix thing, like Jaguar sub. How'd you even know that was here? I was like, it's right there on the window, one. And the other thing is, if you haven't had it, you should try it. It's delicious.
It's been around for a couple of years now,
yeah,
right?
And we started talking, and the guys, you could see like the half recognition in their face when I started talking. Like they kind of, sort of knew but they didn't want to say it if they weren't for sure, like one of those. But we wound up talking Jags football for 5 minutes. And it's so much fun to go out this year and be in the public and talk to fans like that. And it's not all, what are they going to do in the draft? And, can you really believe how bad they are? And do you think they maybe have a chance to get a win this Sunday? Or maybe we'll see them win a home game at some point in time. Like, the conversation is completely different. Yesterday it was, I think they can beat anybody. I think we could beat the Patriots. Like, hearing Jaguars fans even say something like that, even if you're out there and you don't necessarily believe it, what a turnaround from one year to the next for this team, and another opportunity today to go on the road and get a 5-game winning streak. The Jaguars could come out of today with a 5-game winning streak.
That was actually my next sentence. The Jaguars look for their 5th straight victory for the first time since 2005. Blythe, that was a long time ago.
A super long time ago, and especially for this Jaguars fan base, I still think we're kind of in the phase where we're accepting that we can talk about the playoffs. I just called and reserved my playoff tickets the other day because at the beginning of the season, when you get that option as a season ticket holder, I sort of just laughed at it. I was like, no way, I'm not even going to sign this box. I had to call earlier in the week to make sure that I was actually set up for playoff tickets.
And that's an exciting thing. I mean, that's a moment that this fan base has not had in a long time. Obviously 2007 the Jaguars made the playoffs, but no one expected the Jaguars to really win anything. And so this year it is the first time in a long time that the Thanksgiving feast was talking about happy Jaguar stuff. And certainly that's something that just makes the mashed potatoes and gravy and macaroni and cheese taste even better. By the way, I know I heard you guys on Jaguars today talking about whether macaroni and cheese belongs at the Thanksgiving table, Tony. I will tell you that at both places I had Thanksgiving meals, my boyfriend's family's house and my family's house, mac and cheese was at both places.
Yeah, look, it's not a does it belong argument to me. It was never part of it for my family.
Sure.
So, like, when I go to somebody's house and they had mac and cheese or whatever at Thanksgiving, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I could see having mac and cheese at Thanksgiving. It was never like, oh, it's Thanksgiving, I get mac and cheese. Like, that was never a thought that went through my head. It was like, it's Thanksgiving, I get to have turkey and dressing and mashed potatoes and ham and all this other stuff. And by the way, I get to do it all with gravy. So I basically get to make whatever meal they're going to give me a casserole because I have gravy. That's what I think about when we get to Thanksgiving.
When I see mac and cheese, I'm like, oh, yes, mac and cheese, but it's never a staple at our Thanksgiving either throughout the years. But I'm never one to curse it. If it's there, I'm definitely having some. I'm getting a couple scoops.
My cousin made mac and cheese with bacon.
Heck yeah.
So, yeah, you can do it all sorts of ways. All right, the Jaguars defense leads the NFL in scoring defense, total yardage, and sacks. And today, dun dun dun, they'll face former Jaguars quarterback Blaine Gabbert. Blythe, will he crumble under the pressure today? And, two-part question, does Blaine make you appreciate Blake?
Oh, goodness. Goodness. Okay, let me think about this. Well, when Blaine comes here, we know based off of his resume that he's a guy that he can be scared easily. He's not an out of the pocket type of thrower. He has to stay in the pocket, and if you rattle him a little bit, we know that he goes down very quickly. I don't have as much hatred towards Blaine or Blake. I feel like I'm going to mess that up all show today. Blaine or Blake, over under on how many times I'm going to confuse those two names together. I don't have any hatred towards Blaine, but I do feel like that this is a revenge game from the perspective that this newer team is just ready to move on from those ghosts of the past.
And I can only come up with Paul Posluszny and Mercedes Lewis for sure that were on the team when Blaine was here. So it's not like he's going up against a bunch of guys that he used to be on the team with and saw him kind of suffer. I saw a tweet with a Jaguars shirt that said, "I survived Blaine Gabbert." I did think that was pretty funny.
Definitely. That's the same guy. The same guy who came up with that is the same guy who made our Helmets and Heels logo.
Oh, very nice. I like it. And Blaine, by the way, for his part said, that was so long ago, a lot of time has passed. I don't think the emotions will play a role in it. And I agree with him. I don't think that has any factor into how he plays today. I think his offensive line has a lot of factor into how he plays today because they're going up against some really good guys. All right, let's get to the
boring Blaine thing to say.
And I think that it would be heightened a little bit more if this was a home game, if Blaine was coming back to Jacksonville. And I think that's why, media-wise, Gus Bradley coming back to town was a bigger deal than us going to visit them because Blaine's made a couple stops. He was traded to the 49ers for a 6th-round pick by Dave Caldwell, and then from there he signed with the Arizona Cardinals.
Sure, and look, from Blaine's perspective, I don't know why he wouldn't be like, I'm going to go get him. And I don't think there's anything wrong with you saying that if you're Blaine Gabbert, right? Like, you didn't surround me with enough pieces. I never had a chance in your cruddy organization. I'm going to come show you on Sunday why you should have surrounded me with the pieces you're giving Blake Bortles, and then let me see if I can go 7-3 with that. Like, that would be the mentality I would have if I was Blaine Gabbert. But Blaine instead, he's like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I've listened this week, and I've heard some people talking about, Blaine wasn't a bad guy. I never had a good interaction with Blaine Gabbert. Never once. I never had any interaction with Blaine Gabbert where I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice guy. I never had that experience with him. I hope they beat the daylights out of this guy today. And I think it is about exercising demons for this fan base more so than anything else. But I think it's an important demon to exercise. Where, look, this guy was the centerpiece for just a horrible draft pick. It was a terrible 5 years. And part of it was because this guy stinks.
Yep. And he had a bad attitude, a real bad attitude.
And it's on him too, right? And that attitude, I'm not letting it go. I hope they just pound him into the ground today.
I will definitely be very happy when Fowler gets a sack on him, but I just don't think the revenge factor
not from this side.
Right.
It's all in this room. It's not on that field. Like, there's nobody on the field that's going to feel that way.
Right.
Well, and I think the second part of the question, as far as does Blaine make you appreciate Blake, Blaine cannot make some of the throws and plays that Blake
and scramble out of the pocket.
Right, he can't scramble, and he also can't evade the sacks that Blake is able to do. You really do have to think about it when you say their name.
And I've actually heard from the same guy who made up the shirt, that I survived Blaine Gabbert. He said he will never make a shirt about Blake because Blake has been so entrenched in the community here in Jacksonville, and Blaine never was. He's widely regarded by fans and media as just a guy with a bad attitude.
Well, Blake laughs at himself.
Yeah.
Right?
And that helps too. It's
self-deprecating.
Right, and I think that's part of it. Blaine just blocked you on Twitter because you said the reason Dempsey and I both got blocked by Blaine Gabbert on Twitter is because we came to his defense with a fan that was saying he just curls up in the pocket in the fetal position, and he blocked us for going back at the fan and saying that's not a fair thing to say about an NFL quarterback, right? And then we get blocked. Like, that's how sensitive he was to that kind of stuff.
He was never receptive to criticism.
No.
And maybe that's part of why his game has sort of grown a little bit. But he did have a pretty good performance last week. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think he had a plus 90 passer rating. He was actually pretty good against the Texans. But good thing for Jaguar fans is that this Jaguars defense is not the Houston Texans.
No.
Not even close. The big storyline going into this game was Jalen Ramsey following veteran wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald. Well, on Friday, that took a little turn when Jalen hurt his hand during practice and told local media he would be out for today's game, though he was listed as questionable on the Jaguars injury report, so you had to wonder what in the world is going on.
I think Jalen's just playing with him.
And then now it looks like Ian Rappaport, I know, tweeted this morning at like 3 a.m. that Jalen is likely to play. And so do we think that this is just kind of a case of Jalen Ramsey being frustrated after the injury and kind of speaking a little too soon?
Maybe. I don't know what Jalen was doing. And
I think he was playing with him.
He may have been. Jalen is such an emotional guy that I think on Friday he might have thought he wasn't playing. Like, I think he's that type. He's like, I'm not going to play. I hurt my hand today. I'm not playing. And so someone asked him, I was like, nope, it's not going to happen. And, like, the fun part or not fun part for me, it was a little of both. I was like, what just happened? Like, they're listing him as questionable. It's an injury that happens during the walkthrough on Friday. So it likely is something where that old thing where Jalen knocks down passes that he shouldn't be knocking down in a walkthrough because no one's going to complete a pass on him ever. He probably injured his hand doing that. Like, that's likely what happened.
And he's mad at himself.
Right, for Jalen Ramsey to get injured. And then I'm watching, like, DeRocco was the first one I saw tweeted out. And I'm watching a bunch of Jaguars fans go at him saying this is a made-up story. It didn't happen. I'm like, why would he make up this quote from Jalen Ramsey? And then people are like, well, why would Jalen say it? I'm like, I don't know. Like, how am I supposed to get in the head of Jalen? And the team lists him as questionable after all that. I'm like, what is happening with this story? And I look, it sounds like and feels like Jalen Ramsey is going to play today. Like, that's the way it feels right now. And it just felt to me like this is an emotional guy who's going to say an emotional thing in an emotional moment for himself. But watching the fans call reporters liars for reporting the story. And then they started getting mad at me because I was reacting to Jalen's quote. It's like, why would he declare himself out? I was like, I don't know why he would declare himself. Like, I don't understand it. And I'm sure, like, Marone or Coughlin, as soon as they saw it, were like, Jalen! Office now! Like, you don't declare yourself out or give anyone any information about an injury report. You just don't do it.
And that's the thing is, I wanted to defend kind of Jaguars PR because I think a lot of people were going, well, if he's out, why are they listing him as questionable? Now they're playing games. Like, no. They're told from doctors that he would be able to play potentially. Give it another couple days. Questionable means let's reevaluate on Sunday. Jalen obviously was just so incredibly frustrated by the situation, I think, that he just said, I'm out. You know, that's just the raw emotion happening at that time. And now today he's waking up probably going, all right, maybe I can give this a go. And at first I thought, why would a hand really bother him that much as far as, maybe he won't be able to intercept a ball that he normally would. But then, tackling, you probably won't be able to tackle quite as well with if it's, a broken hand or something like that. But I doubt it's broken. We'll see. I guess I shouldn't speculate.
Maybe I'm just, like, underreacting to this because I saw that report and I just assumed it was just Jalen being smart because he hasn't had, especially when he first got to the team, it took him a little bit of media grooming in order for him to be able to speak, or I guess the team feel comfortable with him speaking to media outlets. So to me, this is something that he just said in passing. It was almost as a joke, like, I'm just out. And the reporter took it and maybe ran with it because there's no way that Jalen's going to miss this game with even a bum finger, because it's like Larry Fitzgerald said whenever he heard about this news, is that Jalen Ramsey, even with one hand, is still the best corner in football.
Yeah, he said with one hand is better than 95% of the cornerbacks in the league. I love that quote. And one other thing that Fitz did yesterday I thought was really funny. Larry Fitzgerald tweeted to Calais, are you still going to want to do a post-game jersey swap after today's events? This was after Pitt beat Miami because obviously Fitzgerald went to Pitt and Calais went to Miami, and he was having a little fun with that because Calais made it known that he wanted to swap.
Yeah, he said that earlier in the week that they were going to swap
jerseys. So I thought
jerseys.
That was pretty funny.
No ill will for them too.
He's having a good old time. All right, you probably wish your fantasy team was 8-3, what the Jaguars hope to be after today's game. If you would listen to Fat Tony, you know what? I bet it would be. So stay tuned for the last-minute fantasy football advice because we are now less than 2 hours before the first slate of games. Stay tuned for that on 1010XL.
Special teams are a part of making a team special. Listen for the Special Teams Player of the Week. Brought to you by Superior Fence and Rail, where quality matters. On 1010XL 92.5 FM.
Strict attention to detail. That's what sets Kubota construction equipment apart. That's how they maximize performance, increase strength, and give you the dependability you demand. It's what makes them a leader. Now get financing as low as 0% APR for up to 48 months. Now through September 30th, 2017, call toll-free 1-800-794-4992 for details about costs and terms. See Coastal Equipment for greater power for the great outdoors.
Coastal Equipment. Funny how suddenly there's so many roofers out there. If the storm damaged your roof, make sure you hire a licensed and respected roofing contractor like Carlson Enterprises. Call 855-91 Roofing. 855-91 Roofing.
Goes right over Lauren's face, and you can see her eyes when she's looking at me.
Window replacement company in the USA, selling over 1 million windows each year for the past 8 years.
That's a lot of satisfied customers, and why J.D. Powers has awarded Window World Best in Customer Satisfaction 3 out of 4 years.
Window World stands behind their slogan, simply the best for less. With Window World, you get top quality windows at a price that leaves more of your money in your bank account, and you get the absolute best guarantee there is in the window replacement industry. When compared to our competition, there is none. See for yourself. Call the competition. Get quotes from them. But before you buy, get Window World's free estimate and compare the quality of the windows and the price.
You'll see.
And when your new Window World windows are installed on the there saving you money on your energy bills. If anything goes wrong with those windows, Window World and I will be there to make it right. That's my guarantee.
Call Window World today. Start saving money on your new windows and your energy bills, and take vacation.
My girlfriend went out and did that. I was like,
online at windowworldneflorida.com.
Window World, simply the best for less. Thank you for your
pouring down rain.
Mike Dempsey here, and I'm going to share a secret about a local company offering you something that their competitors simply cannot offer. At TireOutlet.com, you'll find literally the largest selection of tires, the best quality new and used tires, and the absolute lowest prices on tires right here in your backyard. You can go online at TireOutlet.com or to any of their local stores, and when I say wholesale, I mean wholesale. I've seen it, guys. Your warehouse seems like it never ends. Visit TireOutlet.com. Wholesale prices, premium service. Ring Blue for the Blue Crab House. You know, folks, it's not only about the seafood, which is the best in Jacksonville. How about pasta, chicken, burgers as well, oysters by the tray or steamed on the half shell? Out of this world, of course, the best
you need
place
to stop
to go
listening to
for
Florida
crabs,
Georgia Line
the Blue
and
Crab
go
House.
listen.
Sausage and shrimp gumbo, unlike anything you'll find anywhere else in town. It is the Blue Crab House, open at 4:30 daily, except for Monday. Julington Creek Road, the Blue Crab House, 260.
AJ Boya said it earlier this week.
Dan and Jeff, mornings on 1010XL, 92.5 FM.
Tee it up at Edward Watts Golf Shop's Black Friday sale. Happening Black Friday through Sunday the 26th.
Well, they kept,
3 days only. You won't want
from
to
his
miss the
interview,
best deals
AJ
in golf
Boya was
this
saying that
holiday
his
season
dad
with
kept
huge
sending
savings
ideas
in
for the
every
two of
department.
him and
Save on
Jalen.
golf
He said,
gloves,
well, we
balls,
can't
shoes,
make it
bags,
just about us
rangebinders,
two. We have to make it
and
really about the whole
Callaway has
defense.
gotten
And
into
so
the
that's
holiday
when
spirit
they
by
started
offering a
using Jackson
50% bonus trade-in until the end of this month. And buy with confidence, knowing every purchase at Edwin Watts is backed by a 90-day, 100% guarantee. Don't miss this sale. Black Friday through Sunday the 26th, only at Edwin Watts.
I ain't.
This is the bag. By now you've heard my commercial.
I love it, but I'm not eating it.
As a result, we've added some good
Now, we
drivers
can
to our
just
team.
throw it to the
However, we
fantasy
still have
football
some
finder.
positions to fill. We're looking
I
for
said I can
CDL
just throw it
drivers
to
in
the fantasy
Northeast
football
Florida, especially in
founder.
Clay
Okay,
County,
if you come
St.
back
Johns
with the song,
County,
then
and yes,
come back with
Duval. Come be a starter on our team. Earn a solid wage and get full
Thank you,
benefits.
sir.
Head to our website, advanceddisposal.com/careers. Get signed up today. That's advanceddisposal.com/careers.
Equal opportunity employer.
Is your home a wired mess? Do you need
Oh,
TVs
yeah, I
mounted
saw
on
you
a
do
wire
that.
or stereo systems connected?
Godfather.
Have
Like
Alpha
my
Dog
whole
install it right.
All I have to
Tell
say
them
is
you want the
thank
high-flying
goodness that
Jacko
you're doing
special
this
and get $25
Yes,
off.
the first half hour.
AlphaDogSecurity.com.
The last 20
The
minutes
biggest
of
complaints
Godfather.
personal injury clients have with their lawyers are they can't get a hold of them, they don't know
We
what's
did
going
have
on with their
breakfast.
case. This is Attorney
the plan
Brent
was to
Hastings, and our
run and
firm isn't
drink,
like any
you know,
other
the
Jacksonville
pizza.
injury firm. I personally meet
Since
with
they had
every
breakfast,
client,
I was
and
like,
no
I have to
client
either get in
question
3
goes
hours
unanswered.
and then I
Don't
can
take
3
my
hours. Why
word
am I
for it,
eating
take
now?
my clients. Visit justiceforjacksonville.com
Thank
for our
you.
clients'
And I agree with you,
testimonials.
there's
There are
nothing
no fees or costs unless you win, and the consultation is always free. Law
I think I would like to
offices
go
of
to
Brett
it
Hastings, where the injured
from like an
find
outside.
justice.
If I had like, I don't know, I take that back actually already. Yeah,
Top off your
too many
Another
people
one.
and
Like we were flipping past and they were like promoting Gwen Stefani and unforgettable performance from James Fox.
No.
Come up, I was like,
Unforgettable, forgettable.
And we flipped away. I was like, I'm not watching any of this.
Today's judge stands at the end and Brian's music who are now sick for like, he's not wearing glasses. I don't know if that's saying that. I was like, uh-oh. Change the channel.
Hey man, this is T-Wing. Join me this Sunday at Hurricanes in San Marcos for Bud Light Party. Big time celebration weekend. Rooting on the Jags to make it 5 in a row. This Sunday at Hurricanes in San Marcos with Bud Light. Come on out.
The 1010XL Kickoff Show, fueled by Sawyer Gas, presented by Coastal Equipment on 1010XL 92.5 FM.
Why are we listening to the Jackson 5 Blythe?
we are listening to the Jackson 5 because AJ Boye was on the NFL Network earlier this week, and he decided that the Jackson 5 is now their defense official nickname. He said that his dad was sending over ideas for him and, nicknames for him and Jalen for obviously that tandem, but he said, no, we got to include the entire defense, and so they came up with the Jackson 5, which was thrown around earlier in the year, but I think that that's official now that the defense is the Jackson 5.
But that doesn't really include the whole defense. It includes
the
Malik Jackson
secondary.
in the secondary.
Yeah.
So they're forgetting like Calais and Yannick and Dante.
I'm just a messenger.
Miles.
and it was also a good excuse to listen to some Jackson 5 music.
Yeah, they still got Saxonville. It seems like everyone's embraced that. I mean, apparently Frangie was out to eat.
Yes, I love that.
Over in Arizona, and his waiter was like, "Hey, well, you guys in town for the game?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm actually working the game." Saxonville! Like, the waiter brought up Saxonville. He's like, "We're going to have some issues on Sunday." I mean, it's pretty awesome that we're to that point. This city is giddy, man. Like, it's been a long time since they've been allowed to feel this way about their football team.
I know, we're about to talk fantasy. Have y'all seen what the Jaguars defense has done fantasy-wise most weeks?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think it was 27 points against the Browns.
They're a difference maker every week right now.
Whew. Attaboy. All right, well, here we go with the fantasy football final.
Who is this week's sleeper? Who's got breakout potential? Who's a bust? Here's Tony Smith with your fantasy football final.
All right, here we go. Quarterbacks this week, top 5, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, Cam Newton, and Drew Brees. I told you a few weeks ago that I think Blake Bortles is worth rostering at least because of some of the matchups that the Jags passing game should have coming down the stretch. I still think with future matchups against Indianapolis, Houston, San Francisco, and dare I say even Seattle with their banged-up secondary, that Bortles will be a reasonable option a couple of times down the stretch. But today is not that day against the Cardinals. And as for the idea of playing Gabbert, I mean, come on. Other guys that I like this week include Marcus Mariota going up against Indianapolis. We get Big Ben at home against the Green Bay Packers. In 4 home games this year, Roethlisberger is averaging 2 touchdown passes a game and has not thrown a home interception outside of the game against your Jacksonville Jaguars, where he threw 5. Running backs this week, Le'Veon Bell 1, Todd Gurley 2, LaShawn McCoy 3, Mark Ingram 4, and Kareem Hunt 5. Where's Leonard Fournette? Fournette would be 6 on my list this week. If the Jags are going to continue to force feed Leonard like they did last week, then he remains a solid bet for 20-plus carries and a touchdown, even against another top 10 rushing defense this week in the Arizona Cardinals. On the Arizona side of things, Adrian Peterson has been up and down since he got to Arizona. This week he gets a Jags rush defense that has shut down opponents' run game in the last 3 weeks since the arrival of Marcel Darius. I think it is likely that they do the same this week. AP remains a decent threat to score week to week, but if he doesn't get into the end zone, I don't think he's going to help you much with his yardage today. Other guys that I like this week, Alvin Kamara. Both Saints runners are borderline top 5 plays week to week, should be played in all formats. Tevin Coleman will get the start for the Falcons for the second consecutive weeks with Devonta Foreman out. This time against the Bucs. Coleman is a volume play if nothing else. I really like Jay Ajayi going up against Chicago. If you're making the choice between Alex Collins and Danny Woodhead, then I think the decision is made for you in a PPR league, but I actually prefer Woodhead in a standard league this week as well, going up against the Houston team that has struggled much more against the pass than they have the run since they lost those key pieces up front. Wide receiver this week, Antonio Brown 1, Michael Thomas 2, Julio Jones 3, A.J. Green 1 for 6, 4, Doug Baldwin at 5. Marquise Lee remains a fine flex option given the volume that he has been getting in the Jags passing game. Dempsey and I both agree that D.D. Westbrook will probably lead the Jags in receiving a couple times down the stretch this season. Today may be one of those days, with the possibility of Marquise seeing a bit more of Patrick Peterson. So if you're going to be the gambling type and are anxious to get the Jaguars' new toy, D.D. Westbrook, into a lineup, then go ahead and roll those dice. On the card side of things, it's hard not to play Larry Fitzgerald, who runs out of the slot a lot at this point in his career and has been a high-volume play week to week. It's so difficult to put him out of a lineup even against this Jaguars secondary.
I don't want to do it.
But he doesn't play on the outside. He plays on the inside, so it's a bit of a different look. Other guys that I like this week include Mike Evans against Atlanta. I like the top options on both sides of the Houston v. Baltimore matchup. That's right. I just encourage you to put Jeremy Maclin in a lineup. I think the Houston defensive struggles are real. Alshon Jeffrey against Chicago. Devontae Adams has become the only playable option in the Packers' passing game in the wake of the loss of Aaron Rodgers. I own Jordy Nelson in multiple leagues. And while I'm not saying that I've dropped him, I am saying that he is no longer in my lineup right now in any league where I own him. Tight ends this week, Rob Gronkowski 1, Travis Kelce 2, Zach Ertz 3, Jimmy Graham 4, Delaney Walker 5. The rest of my top 10, Jack Doyle, Jared Cook, Greg Olsen, welcome back, Tyler Kroft, and Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Those are all good. I really don't want to play Larry Fitzgerald. My head says to play him because it is, it's Larry Fitzgerald.
Well, what are your options?
Well, I don't have any real good ones because I'm sitting on Chris Hogan, who's obviously out. And I also have Robert Woods, who's out this week.
Yep.
And then I have Paul Richardson for Seattle,
No, I'd play Fitz.
Yeah, I kind of got it.
It's not like Keenan Allen. Yeah.
Bet with your wallet, not your heart.
Yeah, like Keenan Allen a couple weeks ago, I even encouraged people. I wasn't playing him. I own Keenan Allen in a couple leagues, and a guy that's going to play on the outside against Ramsey and Boye, no. Like, I don't want any piece of that. But a guy who runs out the slot, I think is a different story.
All right. Blythe, Matt, any fantasy football questions for Tony?
No, I got my ride or dies right now, and I gotta win. I'm in 4th place. It's a battle for the 4th playoff position, and so I know that everybody cares about my fantasy team, but I'm battling it out. I gotta win out to make the Super Bowl to repeat as champion.
There we go. Yeah, it's
good luck. I don't care.
Well, it's hard for me when Evan Ingram gets virtually nothing on Thursday on Thanksgiving.
Sure.
So it's just now it's a wait and see and hope that Tom Brady with that Achilles, because that's who I'm going up against as the quarterback this week. Hope that Achilles actually is worse than what they're reporting, and he has to sit for the second half. Let's go with that. All right, now let's get it back to the Jaguars division.
Time now to go around the AFC South.
Vlad, tell us about the Colts, still at 3-7 coming off the bye.
Well, there isn't really that much that many interesting stories outside of a scathing story that the Indy Star wrote about the Colts' incompetence specifically when it comes to dealing with Andrew Luck. This was a story that they published earlier this week that many of you might have missed, but they said the front office has been wrong nearly every step of the way for this injury that started in September of 2015, and Andrew Luck isn't going to play a down of football in 2017. I think it's no wonder that Andrew Luck went to Europe to seek treatment, and the story sort of goes on to say why free agents wouldn't come to Indy next offseason because of the way that this front office has managed the situation, almost putting Andrew Luck out there reportedly to save the jobs of former GM Ryan Grigson and obviously Chuck Pagano, who is probably not going to be with the team after this season was over. But one thing, I mean, Jacoby Brissett has been a nice fill-in for this team, and I think with 89 rushing yards today, Frank Gore is going to surpass Pro Football Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis for the 6th most rushing yards in NFL history. And those are a couple little bright spots on this Colts team. But one of the things that sort of made me angry over the weekend is when Colts head coach Chuck Pagano said that his favorite Thanksgiving dish is spaghetti and meatballs. I would fire you on the spot.
Wow. He said that?
Yeah, Chuck Pagano said that his favorite Thanksgiving dish is spaghetti and meatballs.
My family's Italian. My family is super Italian. We did not have spaghetti and meatballs at Thanksgiving.
I was very mad when I read this. I said, fire him immediately, just for that statement alone.
We had turkey, like an American family has.
I mean, I don't think it's a fireable offense.
Fire him right now.
I do understand that that's not a traditional type meal.
This is like that is fireable. Like, that's on the same level as when we had the college head coaches and name your favorite musical artist or band, and Charlie Strong's was DJ Khaled. Out. Like, you can't have the entire history of music at your disposal and say that's the best that's ever been. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Spaghetti and meatballs for Thanksgiving is a ridiculous thing because it's right there next to the mac and cheese and the turkey and the stuffing and the gravy. So, yeah, it makes sense to have spaghetti out on the table. What is he talking about?
Like your food palette should not include spaghetti and meatballs on Thanksgiving. But
I have it anytime I want.
You're right.
Spaghetti, like, that's any day of the year. Spaghetti and meatballs is a fine meal outside of Thanksgiving Day.
What if it's turkey meatballs?
No.
I'm just
getting sacrilegious.
Why would you make turkey meatballs?
He's going to get fired. I'm just trying to help the dude. Tony, what about the Texans who did just beat Blaine Gabbert and these Cardinals?
They did. Deshaun Watson threw for 1,699 yards, so 1,700 yards basically before his freak ACL injury that put him out for the rest of 2017. Tom Savage has thrown for 732 yards in his 5 games this year. With 6 games left to play, who do you think winds up leading the Texans in passing yards this season?
Probably Deshaun.
I mean, he's got to make up 1,000 yards in 6 games. You think Savage can get 1,000 yards in 6 games?
I don't.
But knock on wood, because you never know.
Never know.
I'm highly superstitious right now. I'm knocking on wood for everything.
Okay. We've been laughing at the idea of Houston being a playoff team since the Watson injury. Do you stop laughing at that possibility, at least for a week, if they win in Baltimore on Monday Night Football? Because then they potentially are a game out of the wild card spot.
Yeah, you stop laughing. I just don't see how the Texans beat the Ravens.
And is it the 2 wild card teams right now have a below 500 record in the AFC? I want to say at least one of them.
It. Yeah, they're right at it or right below it, yeah.
So the AFC is abysmal.
We will take a closer look. We have an extra half hour, by the way, everyone. Celebrate with us. And Tony will take us through the playoff picture for the Jaguars, exactly how that looks a little bit later. On to the Titans. They're now a game behind the Jaguars at 6-4, good for second in the AFC South. Tennessee has extra rest after playing that Thursday night and obviously sucking it up against the Steelers. Now they return to division competition in Indianapolis today, where the Titans, by the way, I dropped this stat on my family on Thanksgiving, and they were a little surprised. The Titans have not won in Indianapolis since 2007.
Wow.
I know, right? That's
10 years.
10
In case
years,
you're trying to figure out how the Colts kept winning the division.
Correct.
It's
That's
because
exactly
the Titans
how.
and Jaguars and Texans stink.
Yeah, we're terrible.
Not this year.
Not this year.
Knock on wood.
The Titans want to get back to rushing a ton. They gained 168 yards on the ground in the first meeting with the Colts. And one stat of note, Tennessee averaged 4.53 yards per carry against 8 defenders in the box a year ago. This year, just 2.93 yards per carry against 8 guys in the box. So it goes to show you that defenses have figured them out. The Colts, of course, though, have the 3rd worst total defense in the league. So is there any chance that the Colts upset the Titans?
Well, their secondary is pretty good. It's their rushing defense that's been abysmal this year. That I think that the secondary for the Colts is probably outside of Jacoby Brissett, they're the lone bright spots on this Colts team.
Well, I think 10 days to get ready makes it tough for the Colts in this one because they're really not playing for much. Tennessee obviously still has it all in front of them, but this is a Tennessee team that was walking a tightrope before the Pittsburgh game. And look, I don't cover the Titans, so I don't know, what the confidence level is in that locker room right now. I don't know if a game like that against Pittsburgh is one of those we got to refocus or one of those, man, we've been walking on the edge here for a month and a half and we just fell off the rope. Like, I just don't know. I think we find out today against the Colts. So, yeah, I think the Colts have a chance, but I think 10 days and Tennessee's just better make it unlikely.
It's weird, right? As a Jaguars fan, you were cheering for the Steelers that Thursday night.
Yeah.
Now today, cheering for the Colts. This is just very, very
I don't
odd.
mind cheering for the Colts, but cheering for the Steelers and cheering for the Titans, I mean, I'll never cheer for the Titans, but cheering for the Steelers was a little bit of, I don't know, it was very strange. Very strange. But I'm on the team that the Titans are a little bit of frauds. I think Marcus Mariota there was a big debate, obviously, a few years ago when Jameis Winston and Mariota came out, who would be the better quarterback. I think Mariota is still a good long-term play at quarterback, but I just don't think that he'll ever reach that elite level.
We'll get into how the Jaguars beat the Cardinals next, right here on 1010XL.
Every contest is a moment where the rubber hits the road.
Thanks. Looking to throw fires.
I haven't eaten any of my leftovers because we've been running around like crazy since Thursday. So I've already set up that I'm going to have a nice Thanksgiving leftover meal with the game. And then I'm going to watch. And I didn't know that.
Don't eat it before the game, then you'll fall asleep.
Yeah, definitely. But I didn't know that Die Hard pack came with 4 movies.
Oh, yeah, you got all my Die Hards.
I opened it up, I was like, tonight is the night. And I'm like, 4 movies? I can't do all 4.
No, it's just I don't have the one. I have all 4 now.
I'll talk about it later. I'll save my reaction.
Is erectile dysfunction making moments of sexual intimacy a thing of the past? The urologists at the McKeever Men's Health Clinic in Coloplast have solutions to help you feel
did y'all just have
like
syndicated
yourself again.
content on
Schedule an
Thursday and
appointment
Friday?
at one of McKeever's 6 area locations.
Do y'all ever do any like
to
best
learn more
ofs?
about a long-lasting ED solution
not
from
that I'm aware of.
Coloplast. Or for more information, visit our website at McKeeverClinic.com.
You'd have to almost note it as the season progresses.
Call 355-6583.
I will put that over
McKeever Men's Health Clinic in Coloplast. Innovators in urological care.
To all who've asked when McRib is coming back, you've hashtagged about your
Right.
hunger and posted your passion 29,000 times. You blog, gift, or gif about your cravings. You even Throwback Thursday
I did hear that. That was,
with your
what,
cousin, and it was
Wednesday's show?
glorious.
Yeah.
And now it's time to eat one. Then post a picture of it.
McRib is back. Get
We've
the
had
tangy
fun at the
taste you've
Super
been
Bowl.
craving. Try McRib Extra
I
Value
bet.
Meal with fries and a cool, refreshing Dr. Pepper. For limited time.
How could you
Awesome
not
if
have?
the Jaguars would ever make it, but it changes the weeks.
That's the week?
You're an original. Nobody walks like you, laughs like you, or sings in their car like you.
It would change the way we do
You're a blend of signature spice mixed with original sauce over a bed of really awesome
I was gonna say, that's the
More
major.
It wouldn't just
flavorful,
be
and
me
we
and
salute
James,
you with a
yeah.
sandwich as
So we're
flavorful
not,
as you are.
But a couple years ago,
Signature craft recipes. Try the signature sriracha sandwich from McDonald's, topped with creamy sriracha mac sauce, crispy onions, baby spinach and kale, and white cheddar cheese.
And
That's like a spectacle now.
yeah,
participating
media day is
McDonald's.
awesome. You go down and you talk to players on both teams that are getting ready to play in the Super Bowl.
Don't let your next
But
tailgate party
Rick
go up in smoke. Call
came
me,
in and
Jen,
like
and
Rick
Sticky
actually
Fingers
never
Rib
came
House.
in.
We're always
Frank
serving up
came
a
in during the
legendary
intermission
catering
between,
experience.
walked down
So
the
let
floor and then
Sticky
walked right
Fingers
back out.
get this
He
pork
wasn't
party
even in the
started
room when
with
there were
Memphis
players in
style
the room.
ribs, succulent pulled pork,
And then we got
and
over
the
the
best
table and I
smoked
was
wings in
uploading everything to send it
Duval.
back.
So get
And Rick's like,
sticky
"You got
and
the
have
talking
fun.
people?" I'm like,
Visit
"Yeah,
stickyfingers.com to
talking
order.
about the
Or come see us in River City Marketplace.
That's why we're here,
Because at
dude.
Sticky Fingers, our pits smell
He's like,
way
"Yeah, how
better
many
than
did
your
you get?" I was
pits.
like, "I don't know, I probably got 8.
Catch
Dempsey
Tony
probably got
Baselli
another
on
8 to 10
1010XL,
one-on-one.
The footage you could get
92.5 FM.
Yeah.
would be incredible.
Hello, Jacksonville.
Plus, when
Geico
we're the
presents
only ones there,
things that'll make you
we can
feel
schedule stuff
good.
all day and talk.
Right.
There's an island in Japan filled
Well,
with
the whole
buddies.
station's going to be
Cuddly,
there. Plus,
soft,
if the
warm
Jags are
buddies.
again, who cares?
Something
I don't
else to
even
make you
wanna
feel
talk
good?
about it.
Right.
Geico's been
A
offering
week
great
or-
savings
we're
and
gonna
service for
be
over 75
out.
years. It has a 97%
Right, you don't need
customer
as many, like,
satisfaction rate
former
and
Hall of
satisfying
Fame
coverage.
If we get a
Geico
big
isn't
name,
just for your
sit 'em
car.
down.
Geico Insurance Agency can help you with renter's insurance too.
Other than
And
that,
Geico offers
we were
motorcycle,
talking
RV,
about
and boat
matchups in the
insurance.
Super Bowl.
You know what else will make you
That's
feel
wild.
good? Honey doesn't spoil, which means
Wild.
bees are magical,
And we're
or
playing
there's a
sound.
scientific reason honey
So
tastes
here's what
delicious
they had to say
forever.
yesterday.
We're going with Magic Bees.
They
And
have
Geico
media
is the
availability
largest
like
auto
every
insurer
day.
in the state. So
Now,
breathe easy.
would you guys
We've got
stay?
your back.
Obviously, I would think you would
Plus,
stay there
you might be
for
able
the
to save
game,
even
or
more
would you
money
fly
because
back to
Geico has
Jacksonville?
local
I don't know
agents
what the
in your
plan would be.
area who can help
'Cause
you
I-
find
if-
savings, like military or federal
If the
discounts.
Jaguars ever went to the
And
Super
Geico
Bowl,
offers
I don't
emergency
know
roadside
that I would
service.
fly to the Super to the game. I think I would want to be here for it, like watch it. I would imagine like Daly's Place or Everbank would do something, some kind of viewing watch party. That's where I would want to be.
It's pretty, I mean, it's unique. Super Bowl is
I would love to go to the game. I just couldn't pay $2
Yeah.
per ticket.
It's all corporate. It's not, to me, it's not. I mean, you have a select group of fans that are there that are like legitimate fans, but to me, it's more of like a corporate entertaining event more than anything.
the week would be awesome, though.
Yeah.
Jacksonville.
Let Global Diamonds help you create
So what y'all are
unforgettable
saying, we're not
Christmas
going to
moments.
Nashville for New Year's
We've
Eve.
put together our most impressive
I
holiday
think
gift
it's
collection
still
ever. And
posted
right
to
now,
that,
everything's
so.
even more affordable.
If I'm
With
up
3
there,
years,
I'll
zero
check
interest
it.
financing, dazzling diamond earrings, elegant diamond bracelets, stunning
Okay, thank
pendants,
you.
rare colored gemstones, timeless diamond eternity bands. Global Diamonds has the jewelry women love. How about something different, unique, one of a kind? We've expanded our exclusive designer collections for the holidays with all new fashion-forward jewelry, and our experts are here to guide you all the way. And if you're getting engaged in December or upgrading your engagement ring, you can also take advantage of this 3-year zero-interest finance offer. How about a $6,000 Tacori or Veragio vintage ring with a GIA-certified diamond for around $170 a month? Global Diamonds, helping you make this Christmas truly unforgettable.
Right.
The market's a town center between West Marine and REI. Global Diamonds, official jeweler of the Jaguars.
There's only so many things I can do.
My aunt was trying to schedule
The best place to
Christmas
fish this
Eve dinner,
weekend.
and I was like, well, you know the Jaguars are on. I was like, I can leave at halftime and come watch, but you better have the game.
Brought to you by North Florida Yacht Sales, voted Jacksonville's #1.
I think it's later. It's a 4 p.m. game.
92.5 FM. This is the 1010XL Kickoff Show, fueled by Sawyer Gas, presented by Coastal Equipment on 1010XL 92.5 FM.
The Sultans of Swing. I added this song last week when the Jaguars were up in Cleveland for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because Dire Straits is in that.
Yeah.
And it's always good to listen to Dire Straits. In my opinion, running back Leonard Fournette is just 260 yards away from becoming Jacksonville's first 1,000-yard rusher since Maurice Jones-Drew in 2011. Blythe, has Leonard Fournette met your expectations so far this season?
He's exceeded them. I think that this entire offense runs through Fournette. Other teams know it. That's why they try to stack the box and stop him and force Blake to throw. He is the linchpin that keeps this offense together. And outside of him, the defense is really the biggest scoring weapons that we have on this team.
And by the way, we will hear from Marcel Darius. We've not gotten to hear from him yet on the kickoff show, but Hayes caught up with him this week. So we will hear from the defensive tackle coming up a little later in the show, as well as we will talk to ESPN NFL Nation reporter Josh Weinfuss. He covers the Cardinals out in Arizona, so we will get to all of that in just a little bit. Tony, speaking of Fournette, the offensive line in front of him has had to shuffle some of the pieces. Again this week, left guard Patrick Omameh and right tackle Jeremy Parnell did not make the trip to Arizona. What do you expect the offensive line to look like this week?
We'll see. Look,
Chris Reed again?
I think it's interesting, right? That they've had to shuffle it around and do as much as they have as far as, playing different combinations on the line. They ran the ball okay last week, moving everything around as much as they did, but they had to run it a ton, and they weren't very efficient doing it. And I think, there could be some concern in that kind of area as far as going forward. I think it's the biggest question coming down the stretch for this Jaguars team is, can they get healthy up front? Because I think if they get healthy up front, this is a team that wants to run the ball as much or more than anybody else in the league. And I don't know how you may be able to do it effectively against, the teams like Cleveland. And I get it. Cleveland's been a pretty good rush defense this year, but it's not the same. Playing a pretty good rush defense in Cleveland in November and playing a pretty good rush defense in Pittsburgh in January. Like, it's just a different animal, and I think they need to get healthy in that spot if they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. By the way, we have been having some gorgeous weather, but Blythe, for fans out in Phoenix, what's the weather like out there?
It's going to be pretty gorgeous as well. The University of Phoenix Stadium is in a dome, so the weather won't play much of a factor during this game, unlike last week where snow and sleet were a problem for Jaguars players. But fans tailgating should expect clear skies, no humidity, or next to no humidity.
Oh, that's
and
so nice.
Temps around 86 degrees. When I see low humidity, that's the day you're going to do your hair, because your hair is going to look good all day.
I remember going to California. When I was a teenager, I didn't really care. And then I went when I was in my early 20s, and I was like, this is the best my hair has ever looked. Like, Tony, you'll never understand.
Nope.
But for those of us who live with humidity on a daily basis, and especially if you have naturally like wavy hair, which I know both of us do, the frizz is just something that you're constantly trying to battle. And no humidity means there is no frizz, and it is glorious. Defensive end Calais Campbell faces his former team today. Tony, how much of an impact has he made on the Jaguars?
Big. Look, I don't think – I talked about it in the offseason when we were trying to project what this defense could be with the additions that they made. And, look, you don't have free agent classes very often that everyone not only is exactly what you expected but more. Mm-hmm. But I think that's exactly what it's been this year. I said when they brought in A.J. Boye and he's going to be playing opposite Jalen Ramsey, I was like, look, I expect bare minimum 3 interceptions. If he doesn't get 5 this year, honestly, I think it's disappointing. Playing opposite Jalen, well, he's at 4. And he's got 6 games left to get 1 more. You look at the addition of Barry Church, which I think has been big. But the big question we had, offensive line on the offensive side, obviously outside of Bortles, because everyone has that big, giant question mark hanging over everything. But outside of that was, can they really rush the passer? Like, this was not a team that was very good at it in 2016. They had Calais Campbell in 2017, and basically that was it. It was, we're going to rely on Yannick Ngakoue and Dante Fowler Jr. stepping up in their career. But the big addition on that side of the ball in that area was Calais Campbell. And I kept saying, look, I don't know. You look at what he's been historically. He's not a big sack guy, but he's been playing defensive end in a 3-4, so maybe it's just he hasn't been given the opportunity yet. And the other thing I said was, we don't know at all what this defense, whether it was Gus Bradley or Todd Watch or anybody, whoever was running, we don't know what this defense looks like with somebody playing that, quote, big end spot that can get after the passer. We don't know. It's been Tyson Alualu and Jared Odrick. Those guys can't rush the passer. All right, they're okay against the run. They give you whatever you want against the run, but they don't get after the quarterback. Calais Campbell might. I don't know. We don't know what it looks like with that guy on that end being able to do that. And from week 1, it's been, oh, that's what it looks like when they're getting rushed from that spot, because when you put that guy on the field next to a guy like Malik Jackson, who's having a career year 2, Yannick Ngakoue has taken a huge step in a year 2, and Dante Fowler's starting to look like a guy that's worthy of a top 5 pick.
Absolutely.
Like, he's starting to look that way, and I think all those things coming together at the same time, Calais gets a lot of credit for that. Because there are a lot of guys that are getting singled up matchups that may not have if they had guys like Jared Odrick playing that big end spot still in this defense. But instead, it's Calais Campbell who you have to account for on every snap right now. And those two guys bookending this thing, I mean, it's really, really impressive what they've been able to do. And
I think with this defense, a lot has been made, especially when we talk about Super Bowl runs and how Denver made their Super Bowl run a few years back with a subpar quarterback play from Manning. Now, MJD was on NFL Network earlier this week, and he was comparing this Jaguars defense to that Denver team, and he said that Denver team was rushing 5 guys. This Jaguars defense is rushing 4 and still accomplishing much more than the Denver defense did a few years ago. So this is really a game plan that can last for the rest of the foreseeable future.
Well, and it's exciting in the sense that they spent the money to get these guys, right? Like, we all, I think, were a little bit shocked when Malik Jackson got a contract worth $90 million. You just thought to yourself, this team isn't that good, and they're going to bring in one guy and pay him that much money. That's crazy. And then, lo and behold, Calais Campbell comes in, and what was his deal, Tony? Like 60-some-odd million, something like that?
Yeah.
And so now you're talking about just two extraordinarily expensive guys, but right now you're going, okay, now I understand where they were coming from. They needed some veterans on this team, and Calais Campbell has been able to get the respect of every single player in that locker room. And that, I think, is another thing this team needed, is a mature guy who is ready to be a leader. Absolutely. All right, by the way, I was surprised by this stat. I was going to say, how did the Jaguars beat the Cardinals? We'll tell you. But first, today is the Jaguars' first game in the University of Phoenix Stadium ever, since they built it. So just put that in your cap.
Well, they only go once every 8 years, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I thought that stadium had been there longer than that. But yeah, first game in the University of Phoenix Stadium. So how do the Jaguars beat the Cardinals there?
Now, the keys to the game on 1010XL. Brought to you by Instant Keys. Fast, professional, honest locksmith service.
I'll get us started. Blake Bortles needs to get the ball out quickly because, speaking of pressure, the Cardinals like to blitz. And last week, Bortles was 5 of 13 passing for just 30 yards and 1 touchdown and was sacked twice when the Browns rushed extra players. Obviously, we just talked about how the offensive line is beat up, so Blake is going to need to go through his reads quickly and get that ball out quickly.
And he's one of the best stats that Blake has is he's a very good passer on first down. So I think if you establish that passing game early with first downs, then I think that it will set up the rest of the offense and specifically the run game.
Blythe, what's your first key to a Jaguars victory?
I think start fast on offense. Blake is, like I just said, he's best when he's passing on first downs. And since 2006, the Cardinals University of Phoenix Stadium leads the NFL with 154 opposing false starts. So it's going to be another important game for Blake to communicate effectively in that hostile environment. 154 opposing false starts.
Yeah.
Better than the Seahawks. I just assumed that Seahawks were the best, maybe Green Bay second best. But no, it's the Cardinal Stadium.
Communicate, unlike Alabama and the snapping that went on yesterday.
Terrible game planning.
Quarterback. All right, Tony, what's your first key to a Jaguars victory?
I can tell you that place gets loud. We went out there. We were just there for a Pro Bowl. All right, so that was just Cardinals fans there for a Pro Bowl a couple years ago. And when they were announcing it was the year that Seattle played New England in the Super Bowl, and so the Seattle players, obviously a division rival, not playing in the game, but they still get introduced on the sideline. When the Seahawks players were being introduced, you couldn't hear it over the PA. That's how loud the stadium was, just booing and hissing and screaming at these guys. I was like, I can't imagine this for a game that matters. Like in this stadium, how loud it could potentially get with these fans. So yeah, assuming they have a full crowd for an okay football team, potentially it could get loud today there in the desert against Arizona. I agree with you. I think be aggressive early. That's been a key for me ever since the Titans game for this football team. When they are aggressive and able to make plays early, we've seen this defense is able to feast. So for me, the second thing would be make this offensive line continue to look as bad as this offensive line is in Arizona. And it has not been a good unit. It should be a matchup that the Jaguars should be able to take advantage of. They did it last week. They made that offensive line, and they made Deshaun Kaiser just look lost. He was lost. Couldn't make plays. Just had no chance to make plays against this Jaguars team last week. I think that Arizona is a better coach team. I think it's a better run offense. I think they have a veteran like Larry Fitzgerald on that side of the ball. They have a guy like AP in the backfield, so they have the experience to weather some of the things that Cleveland just isn't able to. But I think the Jaguars' defense and that line especially is good enough that it should be able to overwhelm the Cardinals in this game today.
I read a stat from the NFL releases that they send out during the week, and they said on Sunday today that the Jaguars can become the 5th team since 1940 to allow fewer than 10 points in 7 of its first 11 games to start the season.
Yeah, and one way they're going to have to do that, get Blaine Gabbert under serious pressure and don't let him find Larry Fitzgerald. That's the thing. You said, Tony, that Larry obviously is in the middle a lot. How would you go about defending him? Miles Jack?
It's Colvin. Colvin is a good enough player that I think, look, this is a Jaguars team. They don't blitz a lot. right? So maybe you keep a linebacker that's on. Maybe, look, I don't know. I think if it's me, I trust the guys that I have on the field enough that we're going to do what we do. Like, we don't have to change what we do. I think if Ramsey was going to be out of the game, then things get interesting, right? Because you're going to have to play Myrick or somebody else on the outside a little bit more, and then you're matching up a little bit more. Then it's maybe every time Fitz sitting in the slot, now he's A.J. Boye's guy, and you keep Colvin in the slot when he's on in there. But, look, I don't think that you change the way that you play defense a lot if you're the Jags, because I do think it's more about the pressure up front. And, look, Fitz, he's a guy that's going to catch 6 for 80 before the game starts. That's who he is. That's who he's been his entire career. You can't let it be 8 for 135 and 2 touchdowns. That's how they beat you. And I don't really fear that being the type of day that Fitzgerald is going to have going up against his Jaguar secondary. I just don't see it happening.
So you don't think, even without the injury to Jalen, the hand injury, you don't think that he was going to necessarily follow Fitzgerald over the field?
No.
Yeah.
No.
They're just going to play their sides.
They usually do play sides. That's been their tendency throughout the season. And Fitz plays so much in the slot that my guess would be that today, if all 3 guys are available to him, they're just going to play sides.
All right, Blythe, what else you got?
That was about it. I did want to add one little note that with the Jaguars becoming the 5th team, that today they can have that opportunity to become the 5th team since 1940 to allow fewer than 10 points in 7 of its first 11 games. The 4 previous teams to accomplish that feat have all advanced to the Super Bowl.
Yes,
so that
I
is
saw that and
science.
I thought, I don't even want to read that yet. We're not.
Gotta start talking about it. Just knock on wood when you do it.
And my final one, get tight end Mercedes Lewis more involved in the passing game. He's got 5 touchdowns so far this season, which is halfway toward his career high of 10 in 2010. You saw as soon as he scored the touchdown against the Browns, he put up that 5, and I was like, yeah, that's his 5th touchdown. Even though most of them came against the Ravens, it doesn't matter. I do think that he is a huge weapon, and it seems like Blake is really comfortable throwing the ball to Mercedes because he can kind of put a little loft on the ball and knows that Mercedes is, usually bigger than anyone else near him, so he can easily catch that ball. I like the play calls when they've gone to Mercedes. So to me, they need to continue that. All right, Tony, now tell us about the latest when it comes to injuries.
The personal injury attorneys of Farah and Farah present this injury update. Farah and Farah, protecting you and your family since 1979.
All right, we'll start with the Cardinals side of things. Corey Peters, their defensive tackle, out with an ankle injury. John Brown, the wide receiver, so a little bit less depth in that position. He is out as well as he deals with a toe injury this week. Beyond that, not a whole lot notable, at least from that side. Drew Stanton, obviously questionable officially for the game today, but Blaine Gabbert going to get the start for the Arizona Cardinals. On the Jaguars side of things, Allen Hurns, the only one officially ruled out, at least according to the injury report. We'll see if Jalen really is out or if he's in. It feels like he's going to be able to play today. He's not
missing this game.
But he was limited on Friday as he injured his hand in practice on Friday. He's officially listed as questionable for the team. Donald Payne, the linebacker who jumped off sides on the onside kick that worked last week, has the hamstring injury. I'm still convinced he injured his hamstring on the kickoff after that. That shouldn't have been a play he even had to play. And that's the play that he happened to injure his hamstring last week. And the Jaguars' offensive line, Omame, Parnell, both questionable for this game as well. So we'll see if and when they get those guys back.
We will head out to Phoenix to talk to ESPN NFL Nation reporter Josh Weinfuss. He covers the Cardinals. That's all next, right here on 1010XL.
Jags beat writer Hayes Carline takes you behind enemy lines.
Find out what we're made of right now.
As he travels with the team going back insights and interviews behind enemy lines. He's brought to you by Riverside Pain Physicians on 1010XL.
You know, the giant insurance companies basically have one strategy.
Did you want me to record it, Blythe?
They try to intimidate.
Sure, yeah. Okay. Definitely. Thank you.
Endless resources. We have our own team of lawyers and all the resources we need to go the distance. They're not going to wear us down.
Did y'all do any Black Friday shopping?
Absolutely not.
I didn't either. Except for Christmas. I don't know if Christmas in the South counts, but it's not really Black Friday shopping.
Call us at 396-5550.
I just don't the news, it'll have how to, score your best deals on Black Friday and on Cyber Monday and all this stuff. And I just want to stop and be like, what do people really need? Stop, don't get brainwashed by all these supposed deals. Think to yourself, what do I need? And if you need it, then you buy it. And if it's on sale, great. If you don't need it, what is wrong with you? But
and some of the deals, they only it's very limited quantities. So it's unless you have a Christmas list planned ahead of time, You're really just buying stuff for yourself.
And I don't think
Guilty
the
as charged.
deals are really all that good unless
TVs,
you're probably,
I
like,
think.
the first 100 people in the store, so to speak. But
I think TVs are the only thing that are like the big deals, but they're the limit. They're the lowest quantity. It's like 3 to 5 TVs.
That's why you get in line.
yeah, and I would never do that.
There was a great, I guess the UK is trying out Black Friday shopping, and there was a great video that was tweeted out at one of the retail stores. You could see all the employees lined up inside ready to open the doors, and they did this big thing with a camera there, and they opened up the doors, and it was just one person that walked in. Hey guys, how's it going?
Like, why would they even know what Black Friday is?
That's what I think. There's a communication gap there.
Like, there's no Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think some UK celebrate Thanksgiving. I
Leave
know
their
Canada has
expenses.
started. Australia now recognizes Thanksgiving Day. I don't understand why. I mean, it's an American
Literally
holiday.
an American holiday.
Any excuse to eat, I guess.
The whole pumpkin discussion again this year. I hate pumpkin pie so much.
It's so terrible. I don't know. I don't get the pumpkin pie.
Someone brought me pumpkin pie and they were like, this is what the Pilgrims had the first Thanksgiving. I was
Are you
like,
sure?
That's because they had garbage food.
Did they really have pumpkin pie
I
the
have
first
no
Thanksgiving?
idea.
I feel like
It would make
baking
sense.
wasn't
I can understand them having pumpkins.
right.
Like, pumpkins seem like it's a survivor. Pumpkins are a survivor. Like, they've been around forever. They're not going anywhere. If you're looking around, well, we got to eat something. Okay, let's try this gourd.
I made pumpkin cheesecake.
Right, but if you ask me,
Nobody likes pumpkin.
give me the squash.
Did you say squash?
I will eat squash.
Oh, sorry.
1,000
I thought you were talking about
times.
For dessert.
Squash casserole, I'm growing up
1,000
to.
times out of 1,000. If you're gonna give me that or any kind of pumpkin option, give me squash every time.
I should have brought in the pumpkin cheesecake. I have way too much pumpkin.
Ugh.
Someone told me it was like the best pumpkin pie they ever had. I was like, I'll try it again. I try pumpkin pie like every year. I try a little piece of pumpkin pie, and every year I'm like, why did I do this? It's gross.
Pecan pie is the tops.
Oh, it's so good.
If you don't have pecan pie at your
We
Thanksgiving,
had
you are
chocolate
un-American.
pecan pie this year.
You had what?
Chocolate pecan pie. It was unbelievable.
Doesn't your family make like a spaghetti sauce during the holidays?
It's Christmas.
For Christmas.
It's a Christmas Eve thing.
You should save a little and bring it in for us.
It's a Christmas Eve.
Doesn't your mom cook it for like a week or something?
A few days, yeah.
I was thinking about that. I made spaghetti a couple weeks ago. I was like, I'm gonna tell Tony to save us a little.
That's my one of my favorite meals of the year. It's Thanksgiving Eve dinner or Christmas Eve dinner.
Yes.
Minutes ago, and
So I was in Jacksonville Thanksgiving. Alex said they don't celebrate Thanksgiving in the UK. Thank you, Alex, for your feedback.
I knew that.
Why would you?
Yeah.
But he said he did celebrate Thanksgiving while he was in Jacksonville for Thanksgiving in 2015. So that's cool.
I mean, it doesn't need to be an American thing. You can give thanks. If you want to give thanks, give thanks.
I looked up the first foods served, and fish and shellfish were included. Potatoes. They ate pumpkins and other squashes indigenous to New England.
Yep, they had pumpkin because they had no options.
Improvised.
The flagship station of the Jacksonville Jaguars. WJXL AM Jacksonville Beach. WJXL FM Jacksonville Beach. Game day is underway. The 1010XL Kickoff Show, fueled by Sawyer Gas, presented by Coastal Equipment on 1010XL 92.5 FM.
Tony Smith, Blythe Brumleve, and Lauren Brooks with you until 1:30, leading up to the Jaguars and Cardinals kicking off at 4:25 Eastern. Can y'all guess why I picked Take It Easy by the Eagles?
Thanksgiving weekend, maybe?
Winslow, Arizona is one of the lines in this song. And I've had it
Say
in my
Blaine
head.
Gabbert's flow, his hair,
Sunshine? The return of sunshine?
Yeah, it's
the
true.
old school hair. He doesn't have it anymore, does he?
I don't think so. I think it's a little bit
No, he's
shorter.
just the tooth fairy.
That's absolutely correct. Blythe, for fans out in Arizona, what's the latest with the weather?
The weather is going to be looking really good. We said earlier in the show, low humidity is key for that game day hair, but throughout the tailgating and the game, temperatures is going to remain around 86 degrees. But they play in a dome, so temperature won't really matter as far as the game on the field is concerned.
Now let's head out to Phoenix.
Wonder what the other guys are doing at their tailgate? Let's go outside the 904 with Blythe.
Over the past few seasons, the Arizona Cardinals have been one of those teams that were an easy pick to contend in the playoffs. But with injuries earlier in the year to stars like Carson Palmer and David Johnson, fan expectations have dwindled a little bit as the team record sits at 4-6. Despite all this, the Arizona Cardinals, not the Seattle Seahawks, lead the NFL with 154 opposing false starts since 2006, which suggests that fans' sentiment is still very strong. ESPN's John Weinfuss was one of the first who shared this stat, and he joins us now to talk about the team and today's matchup. Now, Josh, before we dive into the X's and O's, how have the fans continued to stay that hype that 154 opposing false start records still exist in the Cardinals' favor?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on the stadium. It's a very loud stadium here. The Phoenix Stadium it was built in 06, so it kind of has a loft style to it, a lot of exposed beams, so sound kind of bounces off everything. It makes it a lot louder than it actually might be, but it's been enough to cause a lot of issues for opposing offenses over the last 10 years, or 12 years, actually, 11 years.
Now, for someone who's never been out to Phoenix, I'm assuming the weather is usually pretty great for game day, but sort of set this scene for us as far as that, any game day traditions that fans might engage in on a Cardinals game day.
Yeah, so the stadium is on the west side of the valley. It's in Glendale, so it's kind of, far from the downtown hub of Phoenix and across the valley from Scottsdale, which is another kind of entertainment and social hub. So it's kind of its own secluded area, and there's a shopping district with bars and restaurants that gets pretty there's tailgating all over the stadium. They have an area called the Great Lawn, which is directly to the west of the stadium, and that gets pretty populated during game day. Fans will set up 4, 5, 6 hours before. You'll see tents everywhere. They have a stage with a band, promotions going on, radio stations broadcasting from there. So the crowd support has actually been pretty consistent. I would say there definitely has been a drop-off since they started to lose a little bit. I think it's very safe to say this is somewhat of a bandwagon city because it's your typical warm weather environment when it comes to sports, where when the team's good, everyone wants to be a part of it. But when they're not good, like you say, like today, I wouldn't be surprised if this stadium is, 75-80% full because it's a perfect day here. Like you said, 85. Obviously, there's no humidity out here, and there's this little chill in the air. But it's perfect for this time of year here. Thanksgiving weekend, families are in town. I wouldn't be surprised if people are just doing other things like hiking, golfing. There's just so much to do here outside of going to a football game. So it's very different than the northern city. So, but fans still come out, fans still tailgate. They'll drink their faces off, they'll grill their meats and all that stuff. But that's kind of the scene out there. I mean, it's pretty typical of an NFL, atmosphere. The biggest difference is it's not set in a big city such as, if you have like Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, those types of venues. So pretty out there, but it gets pretty fun.
Well, speaking of the Great Lawn, I was watching a couple YouTube videos earlier in the week, and they were talking about on the Great Lawn how they showed the Arizona Cardinals flag, and then they showed the U.S. flag, and then they had a Mexican flag. I was wondering, with the close proximity to Mexico, does the food and the drinks have any kind of inspiration on a tailgate?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You see a lot of Mexican cuisine. You see a lot of Mexican delicacies. You see a lot of margaritas, a lot of tequila. So you get a little bit of everything. There's a lot of Southwestern flair here. Some barbecue, some Mexican, obviously. You get your typical burgers and hot dogs and steak. But it really is a little bit of everything here.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds like I need to make a trip out
to Arizona. Even after the Thanksgiving meal, I feel like I could make some room for all of that this weekend. But look, I think for Jaguars fans here in town, I don't think it's a big deal on the field for Blaine Gabbert or a bunch of the Jaguars players because they weren't really around here for the Gabbert run here in Jacksonville. But for the fans today, it is a big deal to go up against Blaine and have their chance to see their team take it out on the guy on the other side of the field. What have you seen from Blaine Gabbert in his short time there in Arizona, and what are the expectations for him today?
Here's the thing. I think he's looked very good since he's been here. He definitely has the look. He's like, straight out of central casting for an NFL quarterback.
No doubt.
He's shown the arm strength. He's mobile in the pocket. He's only 28 years old, so he's really kind of just hitting his prime right now as a quarterback in the NFL. He showed last weekend in Houston that he could lead an offense on multiple scoring drives to a career-high 3 touchdowns. And everyone's going to look at the 2 interceptions, but But the thing with the 2 interceptions is that they were thrown when he needed to catch up. So I don't put too much stock in those picks, but what he's shown his ability to grasp this offense. He learned it very quickly, which is something he's had to do, playing under 8 head coaches and 7 offensive coordinators. But overall, I liked him. I liked him ever since he got here. And the one thing I wanted to see out of him the whole time was him playing with the type of talent that the Cardinals have around him. Because if you look back at his days in Jacksonville, and then you look at his days in San Francisco, he didn't have a Larry Fitzgerald. He didn't have an Adrian Peterson. They're good players, but not great players. And now I wanted to see him with guys like that around him, with a coach like Bruce Arians, and that we saw that last week, and they looked very good, and he was very good. So I'm expecting more of the same this week. Obviously, the Jaguars front 7 kind of changes things a little bit, and that's more on the offensive line than it is on Gabbert. But I expect him personally to play just as well as he did last week.
Speaking of that front 7, Bruce Arians said the Jaguars have the best defensive front they've faced this season. How much do the Cardinals miss Calais Campbell?
I think they're missing him a little bit more every day, really. His presence up front, I don't think he was utilized here as well as he's being utilized in Jacksonville. The Cardinals went from more of a defensive end scheme to having just moving everyone inside and having 2 outside linebackers. They run a 3-4. So when you get guys like Chandler Jones, I think the superior pass rusher to Calais Campbell, I think obviously that changes things. But at the same time, Campbell's size, I mean, he's 6'8", 300, 315, whatever it may be. He's so long, though, and his ability to get around tackles is something not many people in the NFL can do. So I think that they're missing that part of it. And then when you move him inside, that size alone, he would be able. His flexibility, I think, is something that is very underrated. His ability to get low and get under tackles and guards, and even the center's pads, is something that these offensive linemen don't see very often from a guy that size. So he has a surprise factor, and then he's very strong. He's very powerful, and a lot of explosion off those legs. And I think that they just missed all that, especially inside, because 2 years ago when he was here, he was able to, actually even last year, he was able to push the interior of the offensive line so far back that it just forced the quarterback one way or the other right into the arms of either Chandler Jones or Marcus Golden, who had 12.5 sacks last year for the Cardinals. So they don't really have that presence inside this year. They don't have someone who's as talented as Campbell. So I think we're seeing them miss it every day.
It's obviously a down year for the Cardinals, just a tad. But what players on this Cardinal team should give fans a reason to hope?
Well, obviously, like Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, the guy is a future Hall of Famer and, still on pace to have another 100-catch season, another 1,000-yard season. David Johnson, even though he hasn't played this year, I mean, obviously, we saw what he could do last year, and if he can stay healthy, I would expect much of the same of him next year. Like I said, Chandler Jones, he's had 10 sacks on the season. He's having a great year. Patrick Peterson is one of the best, if not the best cornerback, especially cover cornerback in the NFL. I think guy like Tyrann Mathieu, who once he gets over the mental hurdles coming off of his second knee injury in 2015, which he still hasn't been able to kind of to move on from. Once he's back to being the honey badger, I think he can be someone that the fans in the crowd here can get behind again. So I don't know. I think that they still have a lot of good young players. It's just a matter of, like you said earlier, the injuries have been a big issue for this team. But I think there's plenty of talent here that the team can build on going forward.
Is there any area in this game where you feel like the Cardinals have an advantage going up against this Jaguars team?
It's tough because obviously running the ball against them is very tough. But a guy like Adrian Peterson, they don't mind giving him the ball 30 times. So if he can chip away, break off a couple of runs, which, however, he has not been able to do in the last couple of games. But if he can pull that off today, that can kind of change the complexion of the game. And then, obviously, I think with a guy like Blaine, once the pass rush gets into the backfield, to see him get out and move a little bit, I think he can make plays happen. He can make plays happen in broken plays. And I think with a guy like Larry Fitzgerald, who are smart enough to come back to the ball, to find that opening, I think that could be a key today. But other than that, Jalen Ramsey's hand, we don't really know. Reports came out this morning that he's going to play. He said he's not going to play. If he doesn't play, or if he's not as effective, I think that can be an opportunity for the Cardinals to exploit the Jaguars defense. But I think overall, this Jaguars defense is so good all around that I just don't know if from that standpoint, if Arizona's going to have much opportunity to find a lot of breathing room. But on the opposite side of the ball, you have Patrick Peterson. I mean, he's going to lock down whoever he's covering, so that can give the rest of the Cardinals defense opportunities to get to Blake Bortles.
ESPN NFL Nation reporter Josh Weinfuss joining us, who covers the Cardinals. Josh, when it comes to Patrick Peterson versus Jalen Ramsey, obviously those are two pretty good cornerbacks, some of the best in the league. How do they compare?
You know, I think they're pretty similar. I think Patrick Peterson's just a better, more physical. He's more of a get in your face. He can run with you, and he can jam you at the line of scrimmage. I think he's just a little bit more experienced, honestly. You know, Jalen Ramsey he's very good. He's young. You know, even Larry Fitzgerald said Jalen Ramsey with one arm is better than 95% of the quarterbacks with two arms in the NFL, with two healthy arms in the NFL. So he's obviously up there. He's on the verge of being an elite corner. I think with Patrick Peterson, he's just such a good lockdown corner that, you know, the Cardinals can give him an assignment and not worry about the game, and that helps out so much because then you have 10 other guys that you can work with. Whereas, you know, let's say he's not that great of a cover cornerback, then you have to maybe put a safety over the top and maybe a safety underneath. So you're now then taking 2 or 3 defensive backs to cover one guy, and that leaves you with 8 or 9 other players to defend the rest of the field. With Patrick Peterson, you have one guy on one guy, and then you have 10 guys to defend the rest of the field. So it totally changes how defensive coordinator James Bettcher can call games.
I'm a big Bruce Arians fan and was pretty pumped when you guys hired him away from the Colts. But how do you think that Arians decides to attack this Jaguars team and come away with the W?
Well, here's the thing. He doesn't change too much of what he does. So it's going to be, you know, they're going to try to run the ball early, and if they start to get behind, I say, you know, middle to late second quarter, if it's not working, you're going to see them throw the ball a lot more. And you know, he's going to take your shots downfield. You know, Blaine has a gun, a cannon for an arm, so I think he feels comfortable calling those long plays for him. But I think same thing as what we've seen in the rest of the season. They're going to try to attack the middle of the field, use Larry Fitzgerald and some of the speed guys to take Larry Fitzgerald underneath, and then you see some of the speed guys like J.J. Nelson to take the top off the defense, and then basically that's it. I mean, Bruce Arians' scheme is very complex if you study it long enough, and I think the one issue the Cardinals have had over the last few years, especially after their great 2015 season, is that too many defenses have picked up on exactly what Arizona wants to do. So all they do is take away the deep ball and then forcing Arizona to go underneath. But Bruce Arians doesn't like going underneath too much. He doesn't like the short to medium range passing game, and that's been a major issue for this team last couple of years. But they'll start with the run, see if they can get Adrian Peterson going, and if they can, that changes everything. That changes the whole passing attack. That'll allow Arizona to have those deep balls, which, you know, Bruce Arians obviously loves to throw. So I don't think we'll see much of a difference this game than we have in the past.
Well, truly appreciate your time today, Josh, and obviously big thanks to ESPN NFL Nation reporter John Weinfuss for joining us today on Outside of the 904. To see more of his work, follow him on Twitter at John Weinfuss, or check out the Arizona Cardinals section of ESPN.com.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That's Josh Weinfuss, and really good stuff on not just Bruce Arians, but Blaine Gabbert, too. Were you all surprised that he was kind of complimentary of Blaine?
No.
Well, he played very well last week against the Texans. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. If you're asked to throw a lot, then 2 interceptions isn't that big of a deal in my thinking.
I am not surprised that anyone would be enamored by the physical tools of Blaine Gabbert.
Yep.
Like, that doesn't surprise me in the least. And I'm not going to go through some practice story where he's such a like, who cares? He stank when he was here. And look, he's better. Blaine Gabbert is a better player right now than he ever was when he wore a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform, and I wouldn't fight anybody hard for saying that kind of thing. He's better than he was when he was here. That doesn't mean that I don't want to see him get his brains beat out today.
It's still crazy
I do.
to me that when Josh made the comment that he's still only 28 years old. How many times did we hear that in Jacksonville? He's only 22.
So
He's the youngest quarterback in the league.
So young. Remember that throw? You remember that throw from that month of watching him play football? That one throw? That's the standard that we had here in Jacksonville for about 5 years.
Yeah,
Thank goodness that's somebody else's problem now.
To liken it to the college team, my alma mater, Florida, Felipe Franks has all the physical tools to be an excellent quarterback.
Oh, he can fling it.
He can absolutely. We've seen his downfield passing is some of the best in probably the entire country, but he doesn't have the mental makeup to be a good quarterback, at least at this stage. And with Blaine Gabbert, we'll find out if he's able to remain calm while Yannick and Calais and Dante are trying to put his face in the turf. That's what we'll find out. By the way, Josh Weinfuss did just mention Adrian Peterson gaining some yards on the ground. One person that's not going to want to allow that to happen will be Jaguars defensive tackle Marcel Darius. Hayes caught up with him, and we will talk to Hayes Carlin. That's all coming up next right here on 1010XL.
Get the news, notes, and inside stuff you need to get ready for game.
By the way, I think you called him John in the Twitter thing. Like, follow him at John Wyfus.
Is it Josh?
I think he said. Either way, it doesn't matter. But
Probably just misspoke. Let me see in my notes.
I just don't want him to be like.
I put Josh.
Good. I wanted him to join us again because he's good.
Mm-hmm. Alex is a pumpkin pie fan. Blech.
Gross.
Yuck.
You can have all mine.
Did you have any pecan pie, though? That's the ticket.
That seems like that's a southern thing. It feels like.
Yeah. We had 2 different kinds of pecan pie.
Yeah.
There was one year, one of my first waitressing jobs was at Perkins because they didn't serve alcohol. And we used to sell pies there and desserts and things like that. And I remember being like 16, 17 years old. And I went over to my grandma's house. And they live right down the road from Perkins. And I was like, Grandma, did you get this from Perkins? And I said it right in front of my grandpa. And he was like, I thought you said you baked these yourself. He was so insulted. But I could tell by the style of the pie that she definitely bought it.
Right. That's funny.
I got crucified for making gravy out of a packet. On Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
I've never made gravy when it's not from a jar or a packet, so I don't know.
You just gotta get the juices from the
you gotta
turkey
cook
pan
something.
and then
Yeah.
the flour and the giblet.
No turkey gravy. I'm a brown gravy enthusiast. I brought my own gravy because I knew that they would only have turkey
I
gravy
like
there.
turkey gravy.
Me
I'm
too.
a brown gravy is where it's at. That's my
Fine with
Hard
whatever
to.
gravy of whatever we cooked. I'm fine with it.
no.
As long as it's made the same way my grandmother made it, then I'm good.
But I guess I need to research some brown gravy traditions because I asked my mom, I was like, are we going to have a couple different kinds of gravy or are we going to be communists again? She said, if you want your brown gravy, you have to make it.
I don't complain about anything. It feeds me. I was at a friend's house for a 1-year-old's birthday party a couple weeks ago, and their father, who I know I'm friends with, but not really friends with, they were making whatever food they were making, and he hands me something. He's like, "Here, try this," and I'm putting it in my mouth before I even ask what it is. I'm like, "What is it?" Like, I'm eating it. I have no idea what I'm eating. It's a weird white something, and he's like, "Oh, we call it like it was like llama bread or something."
Llama spread.
It was delicious. Whatever it
That's
was.
from Lord of the Rings, though.
Yeah, I was like, it's delicious. Whatever it is, it was great. But I'm like that with like any kind of food. It's like I'll eat it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'll just okay. Oh, that was kind of bad.
I'm kind of the same too. I used to never try different foods. I just stuck with what I know. And then when I was 18, I started working at Costco. And they have all the sample ladies everywhere. So instead of buying lunch, I would just take a plate and go out to all the sample ladies and they would hook me up.
That's
So
awesome.
that's how I learned how to try different foods.
I usually say like, I'll eat anything, except Brian watches that Andrew Zimmern show where he goes like around the world and tries like native foods. And like this week he ate placenta, like literally like a cow's placenta.
I've heard that mothers will do that with their own placenta.
Yeah, there are certain things like that, like cow tongue. Like I'm not a squirrel. I'm not really that interested.
Oh, I've had squirrel
in
before.
eating it, but
I eat it.
I always say like I guess I should say I try everything.
Yeah.
I will try it.
I eat it.
Other
I
than
wouldn't be
maybe
excited
placenta.
about
I
it,
don't know
but I
about the
do it.
Squirrel's all right.
It's
just more.
My family's from Tennessee. I've had squirrel.
I have not had squirrel.
I haven't had raccoon.
No coon that I'm aware of.
I had I don't know how he knew this, but one of my ex-boyfriends used to hunt raccoon and then go sell them at the gas station.
For real?
On the north side, go figure.
I'm glad he was hunting them. Raccoons are the worst.
I hate raccoons with a friggin' passion. My backyard lines right back up to a ballpark. So besides the random baseballs that I get in my yard all the time, freaking raccoons that dig through the dumpsters will come through my yard.
Oh, yeah. Raccoons are awful.
One time I was laying out in my backyard and a raccoon walked right up to me. I said, oh, well, that's a rabid one. Because they're not, I don't think they're nocturnal, I think.
They are. Generally. Like anything else. Did you see the video of, I think it was Eric Lindros, it was Roenick, Jeremy Roenick. He lives out in Arizona now in retirement, and it was a video of, like, his wife was taking of him. They found a rattlesnake in the garage.
If I'm not
hell.
And
I'll wait.
He was.
I think I could do it in 30 seconds.
He was trying to capture it. Like, he had a golf club in his hand. He was out there, hitting golf balls in his backyard. He's got a golf club, and he's, sticking it on the thing's neck. And he finally gets the right way, and he just picks it up. And it's so
nonchalant about it.
Welcome back to the Kickoff Show as Hayes Carline, Jaguars beat reporter for 1010XL, joins us from Phoenix as the Jaguars kick off against the Cardinals at 4:25 Eastern. Hello, Hayes. How is the desert treating you?
It's great right now. We have perfect weather, so hopefully it'll be a good day of Jaguars football.
You got that right. You caught up with Jaguars defensive end Calais Campbell this week. How is he approaching this game going up against his former team?
I think he's got the right mindset. I mean, he's saying everything that you'd expect, which is, it's sort of just another game, and you can't get overly excited about it. But, that's a refrain we hear commonly from players in this situation, and after the game, they usually let you know that it was a bigger deal than what they had talked about. So, I'm expecting Calais to play well today. And I think the biggest thing is just I think his teammates are really going to pick him up even more. So, I expect a dominant defensive effort today from the Jaguars.
Look, I don't think it's like a Browns thing last week with Deshaun Gibson, right? Where Gibson felt like he had escaped something. It feels like the relationship on both sides of this Calais Campbell thing are still pretty good. And it's not that he wanted to get out of Arizona. It's that Arizona couldn't afford to keep Calais Campbell anymore. So I really don't think there's hard feelings. That doesn't mean that they're not competitors and they both want to show the other one, what walked out the door, essentially, today.
Right, and I think that's an important distinction. But Calais Campbell doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that needs a lot of extra motivation anyway. I think he's pretty motivated internally. So while I'm sure there's got to be a part of it that he wants to play well just because it is his former team, but not from an animosity standpoint. I think it's more, just to, show them how well things are going for him in Jacksonville and how well this defense is playing. And, obviously the Jaguars still have a chance to have a special season, and, that's getting harder for Arizona to sort of see with all the injuries they've had and where their record stands right now. They're not out of it, but they're close. So, I think Calais Campbell is playing more for where this season is and what the Jaguars can still accomplish.
Hayes, we know that this Jaguars defense is going to attack this Arizona offense, but how did the Jaguars offense attack the Arizona defense today?
It's a good question. I would start by testing Arizona deep. And again, it's sort of what we talked about in previous weeks, but I think Arizona's going to look at this and say, okay, we've got Patrick Peterson, we've got Baker, we've got the Honey Badger. They're not going to throw it deep on us. They're going to try and get the run going. And I'm sure that obviously will be a big part of it, but I think you try and use that to your advantage, I think, if you're the Jaguars, and see if you can connect, with Keelan Cole down the field or Dede or Marquise. But I would attack them early. I almost would, maybe on the second or third series, even go some tempo and really try to, have Blake lead a drive where it's, 60 to 80 yards all through the air. And just to show Arizona that you're willing to do it. And then obviously they can, spend the majority of the remainder of the game trying to work Leonard and Ivory and Yelton with the ground attack.
Hayes, how healthy is running back Leonard Fournette?
I think he's better than what I expected. I thought he looked pretty good last week, ran over 100 yards against a pretty good Cleveland run defense. So I'm sure the ankle is an issue, but, he's a young guy, and, with each day he's getting, a little bit more healthy. So, assuming he's not doing anything on Sundays to make it worse, then, he is getting a pretty good amount of healing time during the week. He practiced more this week than he had in previous ones. So, you know, he's not 100%, but, you know, like Doug Marrone says, really no running back is by this point in the year. But I think he's still at a level where he's able to go out and make some spectacular plays and have good production. So, you know, I would anticipate, you know, Leonard being able to, you know, once again flirt with going over 100 yards against this defense.
And he's running behind a beaten-up offensive line. Who do you think the starting five will be today?
I think it'll probably be what we've seen. I thought Chris Reed did enough good things at left guard that he'll probably hold on to that spot. And, you know, I thought that they might give Josh Walker a chance at right tackle. They did, and they went with Josh Wells. And, you know, I think it's one of these things that if you're winning, you probably don't tinker with it too much. I thought Wells was better against Cleveland than he was against the Chargers. So while I still question, you know, how effective he can be as a right tackle, I would anticipate that, you know, they'll put him back out there. So I think it'll be the five that, you know, we saw last week with Parnell and Omame not making the trip.
I've said a couple times this week already, Hayes, that I think Dede will likely lead this team in receiving in at least a couple games coming down the stretch here. I think today might be one of those games, with it being kind of the second guy getting more opportunities against this particular defense in the Cardinals and Patrick Peterson. What were your thoughts on Dede's debut, and what are your thoughts on him coming into the game today?
I thought it was a really good debut. It was a 35 snap workload, which made sense for it being his debut. That could certainly increase today, and I thought he did a really good job of playing without a lot of rust. So I think Dede is a good candidate to sort of have that breakout game today. I don't know about like 120 yards, but I think he could have 70 to 80, which where this passing game is right now would be a significant contribution. And again, he's a guy that I would work in those first few plays of the opening script. Can we get the ball in his hands on a reverse or just something really easy and quick to let him sort of go to work with his ability to get yards after the catch. And then I would also incorporate some play action and sending him deep. Maybe lining up in the seam and letting him try to get deep between the safeties downfield, because you got to think they're going to bite on Leonard Fournette play action, and certainly with Dede's quickness, I think he can get behind the defense pretty rapidly.
Trading for Marcel Darius has solidified that interior run defense. The last 3 games, the Jags have allowed about 55 yards per game. Why has adding one player made that much of a difference?
Because I think it's got a couple of after effects. The first one is, Darius is an elite player when he's motivated and in the right scheme, and it certainly seems like he's a great fit for with Doug Marrone, making a couple Pro Bowls when Marrone was with Buffalo, and that seems like they've sort of picked it right back off where they left off. And so I think it starts with Darius and his just pure power in the middle and how he's able to just toss blockers aside. But I also think it's made Malik Jackson and Avery Jones, they've kind of accepted not so much the challenge, but I think they've accepted Darius as a rival and have used it to strengthen their games even further. So I think Darius is 70% of it, but I do think you're seeing Malik Jackson and Avery Jones playing at a higher level than they were before. And and I think another part to the run defense is just as Myles Jack got more comfortable, the run defense was going to get better. And I think you're seeing that as well. So, I think as Myles Jack continues to mature at that middle spot, I think that helps. And, and I think Posluszny is still playing at a pretty good level in base. So I think there's a lot of different factors for it. But I think it starts with, certainly Darius and what kind of skill set he brings to that interior defensive line.
Hayes, how many sacks will Saxonville get today?
I'll go with 6.
6? Ooh, I like it. That could mean that Blaine Gabbert doesn't finish the game if they get some big hits on him.
Yeah, you'd hate to wish an injury on anybody, but this I think is going to be a tough 3 hours for Blaine Gabbert. Unless he's just I haven't really looked at him much since he left Jacksonville, so I don't know how he's evolved or matured if he has at all. But if he's even a shred of what he was with the Jaguars, then I would anticipate Blaine Gabbert being pretty rattled with 8 minutes left in the first quarter.
Can we wish a bruised ego upon someone, by the way? Is that okay?
I just want one of those 6 sacks to be nobody near him and he just falls down. That'll make the day. Hey, honestly, to watch that guy go into the fetal position one time today, please.
Yeah, and it's too bad that Andre Franch isn't still here, so he could just tag him and then break into the windmill. But maybe somebody else can have that honor today. But yeah, you could definitely see one of those tag sacks where Blaine just drops down and somebody gets the free one.
All right, Hayes, you were just talking about Marcel Darius. You caught up with the defensive tackle this week. Is he looking forward to going up against Adrian Peterson?
Yeah, I think so. I think Adrian Peterson's 32 now and certainly beyond his peak. But he has had some really outstanding games for Arizona since being traded, from New Orleans, and I think his name still really means a lot in league circles with defensive players. So, I think it may be one of the more underplayed storylines of this week. But I do think this defense is looking forward to the challenge of Adrian Peterson, and I think there's a healthy dose of respect. Not just for what Adrian Peterson has done in his career, but the player that he remains today, even into his 30s.
All right, Hayes, looking forward to that interview. Thanks so much for spending some time with us this morning for you, this afternoon for us.
Sure thing. Take care.
All right, thanks. And here is Hayes' one-on-one with Jaguars defensive tackle Marcel Darius.
We're pleased to be joined with Jaguars defensive tackle Marcel Darius here on 1010XL 92.5 FM. Marcel, just first off, how's the week of practice been for you guys so far?
Everything's been pretty good, pretty smooth. Marone's taking care of us. Coach Marone's taking care of us, good care of us. Just making sure we crossing all our T's and dotting our I's, and everybody's stunting the right way. Plays are being crisp and done right. So we're just trying to stay on top of it and try to keep the ball moving.
What's been your experience so far being a Jaguar these first few weeks?
I've been pretty excited, man. We have some pretty crazy games, and very exciting to be a part of, and it's just been overwhelming.
How pleasing is it? The run defense was last in the league, and since you got here, it's dramatically improved. How pleasing has that been to see that improvement?
I mean, the defensive line that's here is pretty amazing, man. They're have some real talent out here, some really talented guys out here. So all I'm doing is just doing my job, and these guys, they're making plays and they're flying around, and I'm just trying to help out in any way I can.
I saw you talking to Cam Robinson coming in here today. What's been your impression so far of him, rookie playing left tackle, and the job he's doing?
Oh, he's doing very well. Watching him against a couple teams since I've been here, had a couple premier rushers. I feel like he held his own, and he's going to definitely earn his right into a respected place in the league. He just keeps working hard. I like his work ethic and how he goes about his day. So I'm thoroughly impressed with the guy.
Marcel, looking ahead to Sunday's game at Arizona, Adrian Peterson, obviously, and one of the best backs of this generation. What kind of stands out on tape when you watch him and when you watch the Cardinals' offensive line?
It's Adrian Peterson. He still got the juice. You let him get going, and the game can get away from you. You just got to do the best you can and try to contain him in any way you can, and hopefully he don't get too much of he don't get the ball rolling, get a full steam going, and once he get rolling, he's rolling, and it's gonna be kind of hard to contain him if he gets the ball going.
Big game in the sense if you guys get a win, it's your 5th straight, 8-3, and then you come home for 3 games. How big could this one be for you guys on Sunday if you're able to get it?
This is another game, and we're focused on doing everything we can to try to close it out. It would feel extremely well. It would feel extremely good for us to take this win, and for us to just take the next step and trying to be the best team we can possibly be as a group, as an organization, as coaching staff. It just means just that much. It would mean just that much more for us just to continue to do our best and finish up the job we started.
Marcel, what's it been like getting used to your new teammates on the defensive line? Talking to a lot of the guys, Avery Jones, he said he's learned a lot from you already. But what's been that experience been like getting to sort of bond with your new defensive line teammates?
I mean, it's been great, man. Really, it's been open arms from the time I've gotten here, and these guys show me so much love. And there's no rejection. It's just we want you to be on page with us, and we want to have perfect dialogue between one another. I mean, it's a very overwhelming, exciting, thankful, grateful situation to be in. So I'm just excited. I'm loving every moment with these guys. They're a very special group and they're funny as hell too. So we just have a good time for the most part.
You looking forward to Thanksgiving?
Of course.
What's your favorite meal or favorite part of the meal? Anything in particular you're looking forward to?
My favorite part of the meal is sleeping afterwards. Getting some good sleep afterwards and just kind of let it all fall as it may after that, man. That means the world to me. Get me some good sleep, get to relax. Oh man. Say no more.
Marcel Darius, thanks so much for your time and certainly best of luck Sunday at Arizona.
All right, thank you for having me on.
Well, there you have it. Marcel Darius likes sleep the most out of all of Thanksgiving. And when you're on a schedule like these guys, I'm sure that is a nice treat, is to have Thanksgiving Day completely off when you'd normally be practicing. Just under 4 hours until kickoff, and we'll get into the biggest storylines in the NFL next, right here on 1010XL.
Enter the 1010XL weekly.
He seems like a super chill guy. I wonder why.
Do anything with that information.
What did you say?
Rashard Matthews out.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
That means
Because I have him.
play Corey Davis.
Oh, the Titans wide receiver? Mm-hmm. It was either him or was it Jeffrey from Philly? I picked Jeffrey.
I'll probably play Jeffrey. What are my options here?
I don't know if this is just the Jaguars fan and me hoping, but I feel like the Titans are on a downward spiral.
I think you could be right.
I just think Mike Mularkey is not... He's a good in-between coach for them, but it's time to get rid of him.
No guts, no glory.
For me, I don't know. I would definitely... I would like to have him there longer just because I don't think he's a long-term solution. But if I'm a Titans fan, I want him out.
Mularkey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Jaguars player used to tell me that he would fall asleep in meetings.
That's crazy.
I think
it was a rough year.
Oh, was it the year he threw the clipboard towards the end of the season?
Yeah,
I think that was like the week before. The player told me that he would fall asleep in meetings.
I can't even remember which meetings I owned him in. Oh, I hate last-minute injury news.
Wait, who's injured?
Rashard Matthews is out.
Oh.
So Corey Davis is a pretty good play against the Colts.
Yeah.
This league. Yeah, it's this league. What are my options here? You ain't going there.
What platform do you use mostly? Yahoo, or are you like NFL.com or?
I'm on Yahoo and ESPN.
I've never played. Oh, I haven't played ESPN in years. When they first launched, I tried them, didn't like it, hated the experience. But I've heard it's much improved. I still prefer Yahoo.
All right. All right.
Arizona has a top 10 rushing defense.
Do it. I'll sacrifice him in this league.
Letting him go?
No, it's... I have Deshaun Jackson in like every league I'm in because I overdrafted him.
Oh, gotcha. I have him in one.
And
What's
he is going to the bench for Corey Davis.
I have Westbrook, by the way, so I thought about playing him over Fitzgerald, but
I wouldn't do it over Fitz.
Nah.
No.
It seems matchup proof. I don't know if he he really is. He feels like he is.
Greg Schiano has emerged as the focus of Tennessee's coaching search.
Oh, yeah. Give me some of that. We were running up the scores on those losers yesterday. Bunch of losers.
That was great. I picked that. We didn't have that game in our picks, but I have like a fresh take every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my fresh take on Wednesday. It was Vandy will beat Tennessee.
We beat them bad in that state. Man, like, it honestly took some of the joy out of it for me, though, that they had already fired Butch. I really wanted to be Butch on the way out one more time. What a weird year for Vandy. They gave up the most points in conference play in conference history. Vandy did this year.
Jesus. But that was the only game that y'all won in the SEC because Tennessee won none, right? That was the battle of who would win.
Yep. We played a few tough, but we didn't beat anybody.
Helmets and heels. Built by Dreamfinders Homes and presented by Underwood Jewelers and American Window Products. Tuesday nights at 7 on 1010XL.
The 1010XL Kickoff Show, fueled by Sawyer Gas, presented by Coastal Equipment on 1010XL 92.5 FM.
Well, Creedence Clearwater to kick off your Sunday early afternoon. Tony Smith, Blythe Brumleve, Lauren Brooks with you until 1:30 today. And then the boys of the Publix Tailgate Show will take over. Let's get it to storylines in the NFL, Blythe and Tony. The Giants pulled off a major upset of the first-place Chiefs in a whopping 12-9 game in overtime last Sunday. What happened to the Chiefs, and how is that on earth the Giants' just second win?
The Giants stink. That's the easy part of that question to answer. The offensive line is terrible. They're benching players for team reasons week to week. Really good players in that secondary. So the Giants' issues are pretty easy to explain. Plus, they've lost every wide receiver that's ever worn a jersey this year. The Chiefs side of it is weird.
Super weird.
The Chiefs were the last unbeaten team in the NFL this year. They opened the season on the road in New England, getting that win on Thursday Night Football, and I think defensively they've just not been very good for the last 6 or so weeks, and they got to figure out some way to get it fixed. And they were a team that, look, they were giving up third downs early in the year, but they were also making big plays on offense, and for some reason those have kind of gone by the wayside too. Outside of Travis Kelce, they're just not getting as much out of Tyreek Hill. Kareem Hunt, it's been like a month now since he scored a touchdown. It's just, there are weird things happening in Kansas City where this is the NFL, and it's fun to be hot in September, but that doesn't mean anything in the NFL. And I think that's kind of the message that's been in the Jaguars locker room too. 7 wins doesn't mean anything in the National Football League, and it's about getting hot from here till the playoff run in January, and whoever does that the best usually is the team that winds up winning a championship, and Kansas City is going the complete opposite direction right now.
When I was surprised to see the Chiefs signed cornerback Darrelle Revis. That, I mean, talk about somebody who's over the hill, and that to me does show a little bit of desperation for a team that, like you said, at one point was the team that everyone thought was the leaders in the AFC. I mean, that opening night game, nobody saw that coming against the Patriots.
I think the Chargers are going to catch him.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the Chargers are going to catch him.
That makes me really nervous. I said all on Thanksgiving during that Chargers-Cowboys game, I was like, remember, if you're a Jaguars fan, you are cheering for the Cowboys because in no way, shape, or form do you want to see the Chargers again. And
they always seem to do this, I think. For the past few years, the Chargers just come out of nowhere, and they're just that sneaky good team. I just wonder if the play or lack thereof of this Chiefs offense is going to force them to make a change at quarterback.
My dad said that he doesn't like Phillip Rivers one iota. Thinks he's just a crying whiner.
Really?
Whereas, my boyfriend Brian says, I think the opposite. I think he's just a fierce competitor, and he talks trash. So, I was going to say, where do y'all land on that side?
I like Phillip Rivers. I wouldn't mind him, especially at the quarterback position playing for the Jaguars.
No, look, Phillip is Phillip, man. Like, I don't think he's a baby. I think he's a quarterback who talks trash.
Yeah.
And, some fans take that one way, some fans take it another.
I like the trash talking.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like, I enjoy it. The more personality we can have in the game, the better to me. Like, none of that kind of stuff bothers me. And look, I'm not worried about when I say that I think the Chargers are going to catch the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs limping into the playoffs in this building in the first round of the playoffs.
Also
Doesn't
true.
scare me one bit. The Chargers don't really scare me in the playoffs, but if the Chargers are going to continue to play at the level that they've been playing, you don't got to worry about seeing them wild card weekend. They're hosting somebody wild card weekend. That's how good the Chargers are playing right now.
They scare me because of Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. Those guys are destructive in the interior.
And one of the easiest schedules remaining out, so the Chargers very well could get that
I
final
think the
playoff
whole
spot.
AFC has a super easy schedule. Does anyone have a hard schedule in the AFC? I mean,
Anybody who plays the Jags.
Right, it feels like everyone's 3-7 or 4-6 in the entire conference. So you look at it, it's like, oh, we're playing this 4-6 team and this 3-7. I think that's the whole league right now feels that way.
It's just so top heavy, the AFC in general. You have the big teams at the top with the Steelers and the Patriots, but the Jaguars have already crushed the Steelers once, and I think they can do it again in the postseason.
The Bills were in the playoff hunt. Then they benched quarterback Tyrod Taylor for Nathan Peterman, who obviously had a tough day against the Chargers a week ago. Now Taylor's back to starting. What was head coach Sean McDermott thinking?
Well, I think it's a good decision if it ends up panning out in his favor. I think that's just, to me, there's a lot of sort of debate around Tyrod Taylor if he can be an elite level quarterback in this league. But two regimes have come through in Buffalo and decided that Tyrod wasn't their guy. I think if you make that choice in the middle of the season to sit your starter and to see what else you got, I think you got to stick with that second choice. I don't think you go back to Tyrod after an embarrassing show. I know he had 5 picks. And Peterson had 5 picks in his game last week, but I think that's a result of the surrounding culture and talent of the team. I don't think that's necessarily indicative of his performance.
Should have been 6.
Yeah.
They dropped an easy one, and he
Poor
fumbled a
Nathan
snap
Peterman.
that he barely got back to. It could have been 7 turnovers and a half of football for Nathan Peterman last week. And it's not like 7 doesn't really sound all that much worse than 5. But it is.
I didn't watch the game. Were those interceptions his? I mean, I imagine at least
terrible.
half of them were his fault.
He was terrible. I mean, it was awful. And we had Ian Rappaport on the show on Wednesday with us, and we asked him about the situation in Buffalo and if he could explain it to us. What they were thinking, and he said, look, it's not hard to explain. They thought the better answer for that week was Nathan Peterman and Tyrod Taylor. They were wrong. They've come back a week later and said, we were wrong. We're not going back to it. Tyrod's clearly the best answer for us to win right now in Buffalo. Now, they're saying it's not settled. Like, this isn't just because they went back to Tyrod doesn't mean they're not going to go back to Peterman at some point in the future, too. But to have a team that was in the playoffs last week, I mean, they were 6th seed in the AFC playoffs going into the games last week. I get it. The trip to the Chargers right now isn't the most daunting trip from a, opposite field perspective because they don't have any fans in LA yet. And so it's like, all right, it's kind of a soft opening here for Peterman. It ain't soft against that defense. And to throw him to those Wolves was just wrong. And at least they were willing to admit that they were wrong doing it, and they got Tyrod back in there this week. And they're still in it. They're tied for the 6th seed in the AFC play. They are tied with Baltimore for the 6th best record in the AFC right now. They're not done.
I think the Ravens will eclipse them, but I would have changed my mind after the second pick that Peterman thrown. I would have said, you know what, we're going back to Tyrod in this game, and I'm not gonna let this kid really just fall on his face against a really good Chargers defense. Tyrod has way more experience.
But why make the choice to begin with? That's 2 regimes now that have said that Tyrod Taylor isn't our guy, and I mean, I'm not gonna try to break down what the decision making of the Buffalo front office, because clearly it hasn't been very good. Their rushing defense has fell off a cliff ever since they decided to trade Marcel Darius. But it seems like was this giving up during the middle of the season, or they're trying to save their season? I don't know what you get by trading Marcel Darius and then making that quarterback switch, unless you saw something in Peterman that would have granted that.
Well, I'm sure in practice they saw a guy who was making all the throws, and then just entirely different when, like I mentioned before, Bosa and Ingram, they're some of the best pass rushers in the league. When you have both of those guys coming at you, and you're a rookie, and this is your first start on the road, it's got to be terrifying. And obviously we saw that with the 5 interceptions, like Tony said, could have been even more. Switching to the NFC, the Vikings held the Rams to 7 points a week ago, then scored 30 on the Lions Thanksgiving Day on the road. Just how good is Minnesota and Case Keenum?
They're good. The NFC to me is wide open. And I get it. There's going to be a lot of people that fall in love with Philadelphia, and there aren't a whole lot of experienced quarterbacks there at the top of the NFC right now, which I think makes for a very interesting NFC playoff picture, where last year, going into it, Matt Ryan, who may not have the most success in the playoffs, but that's a very experienced quarterback, is going into, an NFC championship game where he's taking on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had to get through Eli Manning to get to that point. We all saw what happened with Dak Prescott in his first playoff game. He played well, but not well enough to win because Aaron Rodgers was just a little bit better. Well, these pieces aren't playing in the NFC playoffs right now. It's going to be a bunch of young quarterbacks, and trying to figure out basically at that point to me is who has the best defense. And you look at it, it's Minnesota. Minnesota to me has the best defense, and they're still in position to potentially win the 1 seed in the NFC. But defense travels. I think if you give me a playoff matchup with Case Keenum and that Minnesota defense, even going on the road against Philadelphia and Carson Wentz, right now I take the Vikings.
Do you guys think that we see Teddy Bridgewater at any point this season?
Not the way Keenum's been
Week
playing.
17 when they've already locked up something. That would be the only scenario barring an injury to Keenum. He's playing so well right now.
And it's crazy to think of the different path and teams that he's played for to get to this point to be the starter. No, in my opinion, the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, with the Vikings, they are playing fantastic football, especially Case Keenum. I mean, if you watch that game on Thanksgiving, he is putting the ball in tight windows and seeing the field really well. It just made me go, okay, in the offseason when everybody said, there's just the same veteran quarterbacks out there, Blake Bortles is better than all these veteran quarterbacks out there. Josh McCown's had a pretty good season with the Jets, and Case Keenum's having a pretty good season with the Vikings.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is having a pretty good season with the Bucs.
And I would say, too, that Diggs and Thielen may be the best duo in the league that nobody talks about. Yeah. Both of those guys are Pro Bowl level wide receivers. Like, they are really, really good. And they're guys that aren't like, well, he's the deep threat and he's the over-the-middle guy. They both do it all. Like, it's whatever you want to ask them to do. So they're interchangeable with whatever they want to do in that offense right now, and they're taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. And there is one team in the NFC that's pretty good that does have a veteran quarterback. That would be Drew Brees and the Saints. They've won 8 in a row. Who's better, the Eagles or the Saints?
It's got to be the Eagles right now because the record just deems it appropriate, and I think they have the number 1 rushing defense in the league for the Eagles, and they're just a more balanced team above all. But the only edge that New Orleans gets is the quarterback play, the veteran quarterback leadership with Drew Brees, and I would put that over Carson Wentz right now. But Carson Wentz is going to be elite level quarterback for years to come.
The playoffs, unless you're special at something. Philadelphia is good on defense. They're not special on defense. And generally speaking, we've seen it for the past 30 years, it feels like, in the NFL. It's about the quarterback when you get to that point, unless someone is special. Denver 2 years ago was special on that side of the ball. We saw the Ravens, we saw the Buccaneers be able to win Super Bowls because they were special.
Like the Jaguars.
Defensive. Jacksonville is potentially that kind of team. Philadelphia doesn't feel like that to me. And I think when you start looking and projecting into the NFC playoffs, it's, Drew Brees with a running game and the type of defense that the Saints are playing right. It's hard not to say the Eagles are the best team in the NFC right now, but if you're asking me who I like in a playoff matchup, I would take the Saints. And I don't care where that game is being played because Drew Brees is playing quarterback for the Saints and Carson Wentz is playing quarterback for the Eagles. He doesn't know what that stage feels like, looks like. He didn't play it in college. He hasn't played it in the NFL. He doesn't know what that feels like, and that is such a valuable asset to a team. It's why it's been so hard to knock off the Patriots. They're not always the best team in the AFC. They just have that guy.
11 out of 12 playoff games last year were won by the better quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm a little annoyed that the game I really want to watch today, in addition to the Jaguars, is on at the exact same time with the Saints traveling to the Rams. But should be some fireworks in that game if the Rams are going to bounce.
And I think that's the that's the only matchup today that pits 2 winning teams against each other. That's how wide open the NFL is this year.
That's why everyone's got an easy schedule coming down the stretch.
Well, and the Saints have I know Marshawn Lattimore is out for the Saints.
Yeah.
They're really good cornerbacks.
Both their corners, I think, are out.
And I
want
to say the other one's out too. Yeah. I just couldn't find that definitively. But yeah, so that will at least go a little bit advantage to the Rams. But I don't know. I think the Rams are a team that was kind of smoke and mirrors, and I think we're going to see them maybe start.
They just showed a stat on ESPN earlier in the show that Jared Goff is the 2nd worst quarterback when throwing into tight windows.
What does the playoff picture look like for the Jaguars? We'll give you all the details. And Blythe has a Die Hard review. That's all next on 1010XL.
I'm Tom Coughlin, founder of the J Fund Foundation, helping local
the J
families
Fund
tackle childhood
marathon's
cancer
Tuesday, right?
since 1996.
Radio
It's been
Fund.
humbling. Every year I'm blown away by your generosity, and I'm asking for your help
no.
again. Please be
That won't
there
be
on
happening.
Giving Tuesday, November 28th for the J Fund Radiothon here on 1010XL, and consider a $96 donation. But you don't have to wait. If you're on Coughlin time, you can make your donation now. Text GIVE to
I can throw in just some extra spots.
52182.
Instant Keys offers honest professional locksmith service for lost,
Okay,
broken, or
so-
spare keys.
Yeah,
Call
you just let me
Instant
know whenever
Keys
we hit
at
that,
722-1111. Get dealer-level service in just minutes at a fraction of the cost. 722-1111. Backed by popular demand. The biggest savings of the year are back at Jack Kennedy's Hyundai Orange Park and Westside Hyundai. Save thousands on a huge selection of new Hyundai. Like new Hyundai Accent.
I walked in, I was like, oh, I don't know any of these people.
Or new Hyundai Tucson SE, now only
I had no idea. I just thought it was because I heard the promo, I was like, try finding the video. But yeah, I didn't realize they were going till like 11 o'clock. So,
America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty and 1 year of scheduled maintenance at no extra charge. Attention current Hyundai owners, regardless of where you bought your car. Stop by and get a free oil change. Yes, free. Test drive a new Hyundai while you wait.
Yeah.
The biggest savings of the year.
When I saw it was 3 minutes till, I was like, am I in the right place? Are we doing a backup studio? Let me just set up my stuff just in case.
they were still talking. It's like, intro right I was like, alright, I need a buffer.
Since 1948, Florida Pump Service has been servicing Northeast Florida with fast, reliable 24-hour pump service. Donna Murphy here from Helmets and Heels. If you ever step into
Yeah,
the
I
shower
was
and
expecting
have
like a
water
nice
or
quiet
laundry faucet only to
setting, and then I was like, who's Tony talking to in there? I opened up the door, I was like, holy hell, it's a party.
knows what your water means to you.
Oh, the
Next
rolling
time you have a
thing,
well
snake.
pump problem
Oh, yeah.
or
So he
question,
catches the
call
snake in the garage of the
269-0202
club,
or visit
and then he just reaches down and picks it up from behind the
Florida
head.
Pump Service.
And
We
he's
make
like
water happen.
playing with it with his wife. He's like, like messing with it with it.
Rattlesnake.
Then he just goes into his backyard. He's got a wall in his backyard, and he just flings it as far as he can throw it. Doesn't kill it, just throws it probably 50 yards.
Jesus.
It was crazy. Like the Ronick, I could totally buy that guy.
Hockey players are just crazy in general.
Or find us on the web at jdavidtaxlaw.com. Peace of mind is only a click or phone call away.
Yeah.
Hi,
I do like his
this is
pregame
Simone
coverage.
Biles. When kids believe in themselves, it's amazing what they can accomplish. I believe I could be a pilot.
I believe I can be a professor,
A doctor.
a poet.
Colin's not bad.
I believe
It's not
I
bad.
could
He's
be
done
a
a great
gold
job in
medalist.
Starkville. It's just,
And thanks to the
I've
love
met him
and
before.
support from my parents who adopted me when I was a
don't know if he's
foster
different
kid,
now, but he
I was able to
not
reach my
friendly human
dreams.
beings, I know.
There are 400,000 foster
just in
kids
the
in the
bathroom.
U.S., and
He was at
holidays
a,
can be challenging for many of them. That's why Mattress for
women's
Foster
football
Kids,
day,
a program
where
of
they
the
invite
Ticket to
women
Dream
to come in and,
Foundation,
like,
is
play on the
collecting new
field and
toys for
ask
foster
questions,
kids.
similar to
With
like
your
how Jaguars
donation,
did the one-on-one,
you can help
except
foster kids in your
the year that we
community
actually got to be on the
enjoy the
field, it was like
holidays.
that.
To learn more or
So
donate,
you're in a
visit
position where you're welcoming in
mattressforfosterkids.org.
You were in Stark Vegas for this?
No, this is when he was the offensive coordinator in Gainesville.
Oh, okay.
Come to any mattress
under
firm store
Urban.
today and donate a toy to
My
help
mom
a
won,
foster
like,
child in
the
your
grand prize of
community.
like passes on the
Not
field
everyone
and stuff.
can
And
be
he
a
just was
foster
like,
parent, but
he was
anyone
not
can
even
help a
friendly
foster
then. And
child.
that's on a day when like
Home
you
of the
know you're supposed
Jaguars,
to be like
WJXL
guy,
AM
especially to all the
Jacksonville
shit.
Beach, WJXL FM Jacksonville Beach.
Brakes for less is what we do. We know drums, rotors, pads, and shoes. If there's a squeal in your wheel, come see the best. 733 stop.
Brakes for less.
All we do.
Hard brakes for less.
Blue here for State Farm. That is correct. I've switched my insurance over to Russ Morris. Why? Well, I've known Russ forever. He's a lifelong Jacksonville resident. He's been with State Farm since 1997. They are the
Yeah,
largest
it's Big
when it comes to
Sean,
auto and
rapper.
insurance. You know what?
But I
He's
guess
not
he
gonna do it
posted
from a sales perspective.
that
He's gonna do it
video
from an educational one.
after
Understand your policies.
his
Call
well
Russ
soon to be, I
Morris
guess,
today.
ex-wife was arrested for battery on him.
276-9535.
This Black Friday, two of the greatest forces in the galaxy are joining for the year's biggest event. Get to Nissan's Master the Drive sales event for Black Friday savings on our lineup, featuring Nissan intelligent mobility technologies like automatic emergency braking, standard on 6 models. Take on today for a limited limited time, save up to $11,260 on the 2017 Titan XD. Black Friday savings start now, but they won't last. Shop ChooseNissan.com and your local Nissan dealer. See Star Wars: The Last Jedi in theaters December 15th. Nissan, innovation that excites. For well-qualified buyers, 2017 Titan XD, $11,260 consists of $8,500 cash back, $1,000 bonus cash, and $1,760 Platinum Reserve Bed Utility Package savings. Dealer says actual price. Must finance through NMAC. Take from new dealer stock. Standard AEB excludes manual transmission and NISMA models. Availability of features vary by model. Call 1-888-858-8319 for offer details. Offers end 12/4/17. Kick off your week with Breakfast with Boselli, Tony Boselli, and Jeff Prosser. Breakfast with Boselli is brought to you by Carlson Enterprises, Jacksonville's first choice in roofing. Monday morning at 8:15 on 1010XL. This is the 1010XL Kickoff Show, fueled by Sawyer Gas, presented by Coastal Equipment on 1010XL 92.5 FM.
Tony, the Jaguars are running down a dream. Tell us what the playoff picture looks like for this team to make it to Minnesota.
Sure. Real quick, though, with news coming out on Twitter right now, a bunch of different media outlets reporting it that Jalen Ramsey is expected to play today.
Yes.
So, Jalen.
Shocking.
I don't know what he was doing on Friday. Like, who was he even fooling? Like, with what he... I honestly think he's just an emotional guy.
I totally agree with you.
I don't know. I think he just kind of said it as a joke in passing. Like, yeah, I'm out. And
but I don't think he would say that in front of local media that are right there. Like,
did he
Mike
say it just in front
asked
of one
him,
guy?
Are you going to play?
No, at least
on
two
Sunday?
guys heard it.
Yeah, and so then at that point he said, no, I'm not going to play. I'm out. So I don't think he was joking. I think it was just his initial reaction to the injury that he had just suffered, and he was probably annoyed, frustrated by all of it. Yeah, that's my.
I'd like to hear what he said before and after that to get some like full context of it, not just I'm out.
In the end, he's playing. It sounds like Jalen Ramsey's going to be available today.
He's not going to miss.
So here we go against the Cardinals. Now, as far as the AFC playoff picture, we all know who the two top teams are right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers would be the 1 seed in the AFC if things got started today. Of course, the Jaguars would like to find some way to get into a head-to-head tie with the Pittsburgh Steelers because they would win any head-to-head comparison between the two because they have the head-to-head win over the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, but the New England Patriots complicate that a little bit over the course of the last 6 games of the season. Now, for the Steelers remaining, they got the Packers at home today. They have been a different team at home than they have been on the road. At Cincinnati.
Win.
Home against Baltimore. Home against New England.
Loss.
At Houston. Home against Cleveland.
Win.
So, now on the Patriots side of things, it's completely different. They got 2 games against Miami. They got 2 games against Buffalo. They got the Jets. And then they got that game against the Steelers. That's the 6 games that they have left. Now, New England has only played 1 division game, which is weird to this point this year. So they got 5 of their last 6 are in the division. They've been a team that even as much as they've dominated the AFC East, usually drops 1 game in the division every year. So maybe they drop one of those games. I think it's hard to pick which of those games it would be. Yes. Certainly they're better than Miami. They're better than Buffalo. They're better than the Jets, and the Jets would be Week 17 at home.
Ooh, I see an upset right there.
It's Week 17 at home against the Jets. Now, the Steelers side of things, a little more cloudy because Green Bay is okay. They should beat them today still, though. At home, you would expect the Steelers to win that. At Cincinnati, that's a rivalry deal. You never know what's going to happen with those. It's Monday Night Football next week. Who knows against that team who gets thrown out of that game between those two.
I'm going to guess perfect.
But then home against the Ravens, obviously that's a big one. And in back-to-back weeks, you're talking home against the Ravens, home against New England. So for Pittsburgh, they're going to have that real measuring stick of where they are at this point. You're talking back-to-back real rivalries between Cincinnati and Baltimore. I think the Steelers are going to lose 2 more times. When everything is said and done,
that would shock me.
I think the Steelers are going to lose 2 more times. I think the Patriots likely only lose 1 game down the stretch somewhere in the division. I think they beat Pittsburgh even on the road because I just think New England is better than Pittsburgh. And I think a lot of people have this image of what New England was defensively for the first month of the season. They're not that anymore. They are averaging in their last 6 games 12 points given up a game. 12th.
That's better than the Jags.
That's better than the Jags average this season. That's how good the Patriots have turned it up on that side of the football here in the last month and a half. So it's not that team that was getting torched defensively. They figured some things out on that side of the ball. I think maybe they lose one more game. Pittsburgh, I think, loses 2, which puts the Jaguars in an interesting spot where they need to obviously win out. Would be the situation where they could really put pressure on the Steelers. But if they lost 1 and the Steelers lost 2, likely you're winding up with those 2 teams in a tie. And if they end up in a tie, then the Jaguars would have the head-to-head advantage, likely putting them into the 2 seed in the AFC. I think that's the most direct path to the 2 seed for the Jags. I don't think 1 is really all that much in play, despite the fact that they're just 1 game back. I just don't see New England losing all that much coming down the stretch. And I don't think, looking at it, it would be hard for them to catch the Patriots, I think, with the tiebreaker situation being in what it is, because it looks like it would probably come down to strength of victory. And the Patriots' strength of victory is going to be better in the end than the Jaguars' strength of victory is going to be. Now, if they find a way to beat Seattle, if they win this week against Arizona and they win next week against Indianapolis, and then you beat the Seattle Seahawks, that changes the complexion of this entire discussion, because now you are talking about a team that has a legitimate shot to win their last 9 games this season, and that could put them in position to catch anybody in the AFC.
And that's actually what I was going to ask you, is if the Jaguars lose to the Cardinals today, then you start to completely change the way you're thinking, right? Then you don't think the Jaguars can beat the Seahawks, and that Titans game looks scarier. But in the scenario that you just laid out, if the Jaguars beat the Cardinals, especially beat them handily, then you are looking at a banged-up Seahawks team, the 49ers with or without Garoppolo, who cares? And then you would assume at that point that the Jaguars could beat the Titans on the road New Year's Eve.
Yeah, and there's a real scenario here where Week 17 doesn't matter.
It's possible.
I mean, that's how well the Jags have been playing right now and how poorly the Titans have been playing. Honestly, they've just been hanging on. And I know the Jags have just been hanging on too, but it doesn't feel the same looking at the 2 teams. It just doesn't feel the same right now. Neither of their schedules are hard. Tennessee has the same kind of schedule the Jags. They all play the same guys.
Except Tennessee has one harder game than the Jags.
Well, Seattle's still in the Jaguars' schedule. That's a tough game wherever it's going to be played. For them, it's the Rams. And I don't know what the Rams are going to be when we get to the end of the season. But they're Colts today, Texans, Cardinals, 49ers, Rams, Jags. It's pretty much the same deal. They're playing the first-place team in the West. You're playing the second-place team in the West. And I think a lot of people right now would probably still pick Seattle to win the West. But it's going to be close between those 2 teams.
Yeah, I do think the Rams is a tougher game than the Seahawks. Both the Titans and the Jaguars have those games at home, respectively. But I mean,
quarterbacks in December, man.
That's the fun part about this time of year is the Jaguars are in a conversation right now for the top 3 seeds in the AFC. That, if we had talked about this in the preseason, and we talked about the Jaguars a lot in the preseason.
It's the worst August ever. With all the drama that surrounded this team, and to be talking like this now, I would have never expected it.
No, and look, you've been knocking on wood, talking about playoff stuff. Stop being scared of it. If the Jacksonville Jaguars don't make the playoffs in 2017, this is the collapse of collapses in the history of this franchise. There is no excuse.
History of the league, I think.
Right. For this team, with this schedule, in the position that they're in right now, to not make the playoffs in the AFC. That cannot happen. The real discussions about, if they slip a little bit, can they find a way to wind up as a wild card as opposed to the AFC South champion? Sure, I guess that discussion's out there, but they ought to beat Tennessee, they ought to win the South, and they ought to be the 3 seed at worst in the AFC picture, if you ask me right now.
And whenever you see the playoff pictures that all the networks start putting on television, it's so crazy to me to see the Jaguars on the left-hand side and not the right-hand side that says, in the hunt.
Yeah, right and now, people talking about, looking at the top 2 teams in the AFC, and I get it, right? Like, I've been talking about quarterbacks in the playoffs a lot here, and you look at Roethlisberger and Brady and what they've been able to accomplish in the playoffs, and you say, yeah, they're clearly the 2 teams in the AFC, and it makes complete sense to talk about them that way. And they're trying to figure out, well, who would that 3rd team be? And you're starting to really hear people talk about Jacksonville. It's like, you look at this defense, if anyone's going to take down the thing that has brought down the Patriots in the playoffs, if they get brought down, it's that side of the ball. You're not scoring with them. If your plan is to go in and score with the Patriots, you lose. You're not going to do it. You're not going to do it against Tom Brady. It's the same thing with Pittsburgh. If your plan is to go in and score with Pittsburgh, you're going to lose. If you come in and say, we're going to beat you, we're just going to beat you down, we're going to make it physical, we're going to make it our type of game, we're playing in a phone booth, you can beat them doing that, and this defense is capable of that. Are they capable of doing it for a month in the playoffs when it matters? I think we're all going to find out, and I can't wait to see how that's going to look when we get there.
Well, and that's the part that everyone remembers is the fact that the Broncos had a great defense with Peyton Manning as quarterback, and he wasn't obviously all that good by that point in his career. What you can sometimes forget is that Broncos team beat the Patriots to win that Super Bowl.
Yep.
So it can be done.
And
Brady into the ground.
I said earlier in the show that MJD was talking about that defensive run or that Super Bowl run for the Denver Broncos, and a few years ago that Denver team was rushing with 5 guys. This Jaguars team is accomplishing all that they're accomplishing with rushing 4 guys on defense. So this defense is very, very special that it could possibly make up for the lack of quarterback play.
All right, Blythe, I have a very important question for you. It doesn't matter so much to me, but it really matters to our co-host, Fat Tony. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Oh, this is
I think yes, it is a Christmas movie. I was very, very skeptical of even putting that two in the same sentence because I've sort of grown up on like traditional Christmas shows. You know, Rudolph and Frosty and Home Alone is even, you know, part of my top tier Christmas stuff that I have to watch. And now next up is really that Die Hard movie because the first first of all, I have to say that I opened up the DVD box that Tony let me borrow. I didn't know it was 4 movies in there.
That's the first 4.
I watched the first 2. I really loved the first one. Tons of action. The second one was a little sketchy just because they had some cheesy lines. A lot of good action, but some cheesy lines. But what I didn't expect to see another sort of, I guess, Christmas time favorite for me watching, the Harry Potter movies. But Snape is in Die Hard. Alan Rickman. I didn't know that he was
That's where
in
he got to start.
Die Hard.
That was his first major role.
No way.
That's where the world discovered that dude. And Hans Gruber, all time. He's an all-time bad guy. It's so good. And it is not Christmas for me, officially, until I see him dropped off of Nakatomi Plaza. That is the beginning. It's here it is. We're here. 'Tis the season.
Now, I do have to ask, okay, there's 2 movies left that I have to watch. Because I wasn't the biggest fan of the second one, should I watch the 4th one or the 3rd one next?
The 3rd one's more fun to me, but none of them are the first one.
So the first one is definitely the best.
You're just kind of chasing the dragon
Gotcha.
with the first one, and they keep making them, and it's they're all kind of fun because McClane's such a fun, quirky character. It's a good time to ride with him for a couple hours, but nothing like that first one.
Bruce Willis in his heyday, he's very attractive.
And
attractive.
This was a career-saving movie for Bruce Willis. He was doing romantic comedies and that kind of it was not this. We didn't have this Bruce Willis until we got Die Hard. And it's oh, and then everyone started doing action movies. Air Force One should have just been called Die Hard on a Plane. That's what it should have been
the
called.
hierarchy.
It's they make Passenger 57. Passenger 57 is Die Hard on a train. It just became an archetype for Hollywood because it works so fantastically well. No one's quite captured the magic of that Die Hard one, though. No doubt.
You've had the movies now for about a year. When do you have to return them to Tony without
I was
getting
going to
charged?
watch all 4 of them this weekend. It just didn't work out that way, but I'm hoping to watch one more again tonight after the Jaguars game.
Cool.
All right.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And it is
the
a Christmas
first one
movie.
was really good. They played Christmas music throughout. It's takes place on Christmas Eve. And I heard this, I hear this debate every single year for the past few years. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? And I've always said no. It's I like my Christmas more pure, but I think there's definitely room for the top 5 anyways. Home Alone is still number 1 in my heart. But Die Hard is definitely made the must-watch list now.
Oh, it's a Christmas movie. And I had the argument again when you had sent out the tweet, and somebody was like, look, if it hadn't been a Christmas party, it would have been the exact same movie. And I'm like, yeah, and if a romantic comedy took place at Easter, then it's not a Christmas movie. But if it happens at Christmas, it's a Christmas movie. If it's a party, it's a Christmas party, it's Christmas music throughout the entire thing, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, they do play classic Christmas songs throughout the movie, and it is really, really good. The first one was really great. The second one was kind of meh.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm not going to defend the second one. I'll defend the first one to the death.
I thank the both of you for not adding Christmas music just yet to our playlist for the
it's
Kickoff Show. I'm not ready for it just yet, so thank you. That will come in later weeks. Can the Jaguars get to 8-3 today? We will give you our predictions. We are almost done. That's all next on 1010XL.
I'm Frank Frangie. Get the facts from Jacksonville's lockdown
Hickman and
report.
Willis.
Jalen
I
Reynolds.
was like, is that Snake?
They had like no career.
Since Jalen lied about being out for Sunday, does he have to take back the statement?
Maybe.
Maybe he was just lying to the media.
Just getting fake proof, or was it fake news?
I think he was just having a little fun with the
$2,000
media.
sponsored by our supplier partner.
That's his personality. He's like, let me see how far I
So stop by our tent, the Tailgaters parking lot, and enter to win.
It was. Even the second one was a lot of fun. Like a couple of the lines, I was like, that's a little cheesy.
It gets
But
cheesy, and it's got that ridiculous finale of him blowing up the plane. With a flaming through the air. It's like, that would not happen. But who cares? Yeah, the third one's kind of fun because it's got Samuel Jackson in it.
Okay.
As a sidekick, kind of. But the
and
first
how
one
many are there? I thought, because I looked up the proper order to watch them in after the second one. I was like, should I just skip around or 6? I heard the most recent one was really good.
It was pretty good.
Attention current Hyundai owners.
Yeah,
Regardless of where you bought your
Rickman was
car,
just doing stage stuff before we got that far. Like, that was
test drive a new Hyundai while you wait.
it.
The biggest savings
That's wild. He's in 2 kind of Christmassy movies with Harry Potter.
and Westside Hyundai on Cassett Avenue.
I love his performance.
Die Hard was in the regular Friday rotation. Movie night Friday night. I probably watched Die Hard once a month. From the time that I was like 8.
Holy shit. Yeah, I need to give you these movies back. I promise I will bring them back
Real
next
estate
week.
is heating up every day.
It's okay.
If you're selling
It's on
your
TV
home,
enough that it's
you'll
like
choose a
I can
realtor
stop and watch
and
it.
estimate your home value.
I just downloaded the Freeform app so I can watch the 25 Days of Christmas, but looking at all their Christmas shows, they're not that good this year. I like the classics, but...
I'm with you. It's like,
just tell me when they're like.
in my house, we watch Die Hard and Rudolph. Like, we watched all of it.
Yeah.
So,
The 5
See,
just
mine
so I know
is
where to
it's
go.
Rudolph, Frosty,
Awesome. Thank you,
Home
sir.
Alone.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Like to have seen
I
your bright friends
think
at
that's kind of it.
TireOutlet.com.
Oh, Elf is another one. She loves
non-stop
it.
in Josh.
We had 1 year for Void's Christmas edition. We had a local guy come in and portray Will Ferrell as Elf, and we created the spaghetti noodles with maple syrup and M&Ms. And I tell you, I've never smelled anything worse than watching him eat it and both smelling it throughout the office. The maple syrup and the spaghetti. It was
Have you done
disgusting.
that?
But he pulled it off.
Yeah,
Perfect.
programmed or stereo systems connected. Have Alpha Dog installed right.
Yeah, that's
The
a
Hi-Fi
great way
and
to start
Jacko special
Thanksgiving.
and get $25 off. AlphaDogSecurity.com.
There was a couple when I tweeted that out the other night. I saw like a couple pictures. I'm like, oh, I understand
There
this
are
now.
homages to Die Hard.
There were a couple even say like yippee-ki-yay motherfucker. I was like, oh, that's where it comes from.
10XL 92.5 FM.
Got some property to take care of? Let Kubota help you out. Known worldwide as a leading seller of compact tractors and diesel utility vehicles, Kubota has the equipment to help you get your work done with a variety of tractors and a range of horsepower.
I'm watching basketball right now.
Like, how many action movies have you seen where the guy's like laughing when he pulls a gun on the guy? That was Die Hard. Like, that was the original.
That's where everybody got their inspiration.
Laughing and distracting.
Laughing and distracting.
It seemed funny, like, the
Makers,
yippee-ki-yay, he
playmakers,
never
and
actually said
insiders
it.
from around the
In that first
NFL
movie,
join
he says
Jaguars today.
yippee-ki-yay,
And when
but he
they
doesn't
do,
say much.
they
Like, he
appear on
doesn't
the
say it.
Rolling Ridge Plumbing Hot Seats.
That's
Listen
towards
to
the
Mike
end as
and
he's
Tony
banging
every
on the
day for the
door.
latest scoops
says
from
yippee-ki-yay.
Jacksonville and beyond. Now, pre-game predictions delivered by Moe's Southwest Grill. Order your game day tailgate today at moescateringfl.com.
We are almost out of here, but we cannot leave you without making predictions. I'm going to ask that neither of you look and see any scores of any games that are currently going on, because here's the thing. We normally make our predictions before anybody kicks off. Right now, though, you could be swayed a little bit, perhaps, by scores, but it is early
Yeah,
for
we
the
don't
1
have
o'clock games, so I highly doubt either of you would do that for the integrity of the program. By the way, right before we get to our picks, Matt was just telling me that on Thanksgiving morning, he went and served at a kitchen, what was it, Trinity Rescue Kitchen?
The Trinity Rescue Mission, yeah.
Trinity Rescue Mission. And
That's
guess who
nice.
he saw there? Former Jaguars kicker Josh Scobie, current Jaguars kicker Josh Lambo and current placeholder Colin Colba.
Aw, that's cute. I love that they're friends.
Yeah.
Lambo and Scobie.
And I think that's fantastic that that's what they chose to do with their Thanksgiving morning, the beginning of their day, is to go and serve others. So shout out to the special teamers on the Jaguars
job,
and
Matt.
one former special teamer, as well as, shout out to Matt and his family who go there as well. All right, let's get things started with the lock of the week. Blythe, I'll start with you.
Oh, I almost picked KC over Buffalo as my lock because of the mess that is the Buffalo offense. But then I saw New England is a 16.5-point favorite over Miami, so that's who I'm going with this week. It's not a good week not a good weekend for South Florida teams, so I'm going to go with New England.
All right, Tony.
I don't know how you don't take the Patriots. Miami, I think I saw, they haven't won the game in New England. They play every year up there. They haven't won that game in New England since, 2001 or something stupid like that.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It's the largest line of the season, I think. 16.5 points.
It's big. And there's a bunch of big ones this week. There are a bunch of big lines in the NFL this week. But New England over Miami would be my lock. And by the way, they're up a touchdown.
They are. I saw that. That was the one that I was going to say. But honestly, I wasn't surprised either if you picked that. I almost did, but then I figured y'all would. So I went with the Eagles at home over the Bears. Here's a fun stat for you. Philadelphia is beating teams by an average of more than 22 points over its last 5 games. Obviously, once the Eagles get a lead, they can just pin their ears back with the best defensive line in football, and just poor Mitchell Trubisky going up against them today. Upset pick, Blythe.
We played and beaten both of these teams, but after the events of last week, Cleveland playing Jack's a little tougher than I thought. I think this is the week the Browns get their first win of the year over the Bengals, because I think that the Bengals are still riding high after last week's upset over Denver at Mile High. So I think this is the game that the Browns get their first win of the year.
Tony.
No, it was one that I thought about for a long time, was the Browns over the Bengals. But I wound up going a different direction. I don't think Carolina is nearly as good as they've been for the last 3 weeks. I just don't think they're that good. And I feel weird taking the Jets to beat anybody, because I still think the Jets stink. I do. I think they're terrible. They just happen to be playing in a very bad, top-heavy AFC. And Jalen Ramsey didn't touchdown Bilal Powell. I don't even think that – I think the Jets lose 2 more games if they lose that game to the Jags, honestly. I think it affects their confidence that much, but they are what they are. They're playing Carolina. It's at home, so I'll take the Jets over the Panthers today.
And I have that as well, even though the Panthers are getting back tight end Greg Olsen from IR. The Panthers just aren't that great on offense, so I am right there with you. Now to the most important game of the day, for us at least, Jaguars v. Cardinals out in Arizona, kicking off at 4:25 Eastern. Tony, who you got?
I can't even remember what score I gave on Wednesday. It's
been a while.
So long with the holiday weekend, but I'm taking the Jags. The matchup is good for the Jags in this game today. I think the defense is going to have an opportunity to really flex their muscle going up against Blaine Gabbert and this Cardinals offense. So I got the Jags 27. I don't know what I said on Wednesday, but 27-13 is what I'm saying today.
All right, I like it. That would certainly be covering the spread.
And no way I'm picking Blaine Gabbert to come in here and get revenge on this Jaguars team. But I do think that he gets a couple big plays in his first game against the team that drafted him. Still, give me the Jags 24-17, only if the defense doesn't pick him off a few times. Because if they do pick him off more than 2 or 3 times, then I think the Jaguars win even bigger than that.
All right. And I don't think Blaine is going to have that much success against this defense. So I will say Jaguars 21, Cardinals 9. And inside of my 21 is a defensive score, because I just can't foresee the Jaguars defense going out there and not getting at least a pick 6, if not a scoop and score, something along those lines. And in honor of Thanksgiving, which Jaguars player are you most thankful for? Blythe, I'll start with you.
It's an easy answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
He's my favorite player on the squad. Dante Fowler is slowly creeping up that list as far as favorite players are concerned, but it's Jalen Ramsey for me all day.
Same for you, Tony?
As a media member, heck yeah. Jalen is the straw that stirs the drink. I get to do a fantasy update today where I get to call AJ Green 1 for 6. Yes. Jalen Ramsey. He is fun for everybody involved in this thing right now, and I think he brings he's part of the reason they have the swagger they do on that side of the ball right now. I don't think he's the whole reason, but I think he's part of it, and I think the combination of him and Calais Campbell is kind of the calming factor from some of that standpoint has been a really good combination at this point in 2017 for the Jags.
1 minute.
And I think I'm going to have to go with Calais Campbell, a guy we've talked about a lot today because he is going up against his former team in Arizona. I think this defense is extraordinarily talented, but I don't think that they play with the same amount of maturity and audacity without Calais. I just think everything he has brought to this team, his experience is just tremendous. And I think everyone else around him, their play is elevated thanks to Calais.
Look, I love Michael Bennett. Give me Sherman. Like that's kind of the way I look. Like from the perspective of which guy do I love more?
Sure.
Give me that
30
swagger.
seconds.
All right. Well, everybody enjoy your game days. That's a wrap for us. Thanks to our producer, Matt LeVay, for making it all happen. For Blythe Brumleve and Tony Smith, I'm Lauren Brooks. Thanks for listening to the 1010XL Kickoff, fueled by Sawyer Gas and presented by Coastal Equipment. Stay tuned for the Publix Tailgate Show with JP Shadrick and Mike Dempsey. That's all next on 1010XL.
Bye, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll be back here next Sunday for pregame coverage here on the live stream. Be sure to subscribe via the link below so that you get notified immediately. Thank you, guys, and have a good weekend. Happy Thanksgiving, and go Jags.